How you guys doing? That was that was a tough loss. I got to say, there's a lot of points to bring up to those of you who have said, "Man, you're never critical of the coaching." Well, tonight we will be. We will be very critical of the coaching. There was a lot to talk about. Just give me 1 second here. Let me just adjust the light. So the first thing I want to just talk about, let's talk about some pluses. I think this was a very good game for Pascal Siakam, for the box score, for the scoring, even some defense, right? I had made a live stream yesterday saying his defense has fallen off a cliff. His numbers are taking a nosedive in January. This was closer to where he was in October, November, and prior to the injuries. So that was a positive. So we're going to start out with that. Precious Achua, a bit of a mixed bag. Honestly, the defense, his defensive tools, what he can do for your paint defense, which has been god awful and atrocious at times this year, just getting that start in place of Fred VanVleet. I think he has so much potential if he can buy into his role. The more decisions Precious Achua has to make in the open court, where he's like a great finisher. I mean, he could be a demon finisher in the open court, but when he's initiating it, when he's bringing the ball up the court, which is something we saw a lot of early last year, it tends to sort of frees up your offense. A lot of obvious passes aren't made. When he gets the ball in the post, sometimes you'll see a cutter flash to an open space. He just doesn't, he's got a double team coming to him and he's still going to take that shot. I think a little bit of too much of that. Saw it a couple times with Siakam and Barnes. The minutes, right? Siakam leads the league in minutes. Obviously, that's going to have a negative impact at some point. These are human beings. Pace is picking up around the league. More possessions equals more times that you have to shift from offense to defense. This isn't, the late 90s where we're talking, 102, 106 offensive rating. I mean, we're up to 115, 116 average offensive rating. So all of that, the physicality, the role difficulty of playing in the Raptors defense itself just creates so many compounding issues for players playing high minutes. We're seeing OG Anunoby, we're going to get to OG Anunoby leaving this game, but we're seeing it with Fred VanVleet. A lot of people have said it's a lot of wear and tear on him. Pascal Siakam also, I think. This is a couple times now where he's sort of playing half a good season. Last year, it was sort of the first half, he was out, he came back, slowly adjusting, finished the season out strong, right? In the bubble year, we had a really good start, gets injured, finishes kind of catastrophically. Still kind of waiting for a full Pascal Siakam year. I don't know if that's going to be possible if he's playing 37, 38, 42 minutes every single night. That's really tough. Just when you think the Raptors can't find a new way to lose a basketball game, they lose it on back-to-back jump balls. I found this kind of ironic because the running commentary for the Raptors was that Al Horford was slow, unathletic, they can attack him. I don't know what Al Horford they're watching, but he's an incredible, incredible player. As I was watching him play tonight, just within the offense, Malcolm Brogdon, just two guys who are really over themselves. Even Derek White. I was thinking that these are the type of players that the Raptors don't have, which are even Grant Williams. I mean, Grant Williams can get a little trigger happy, but different sized, different types. They set screens. They're smart off the ball. Al Horford winning two back-to-back jump balls, one against Pascal Siakam, the next one against Scotty Barnes, where it looked like Scotty Barnes, did he jump? That was weird. I mean, in theory, you have the two springier, younger players. Raptors are pretty bad at jump balls, eh? Kyle saying Horford is low-key bouncy. He is not, but he is long and he is smart, and I think hand-eye coordination goes a lot into winning jump balls. I often see, smaller players beat out taller players because they're just quicker to the jump. It's not really about max spurt with with winning jump balls. It does, however, have a lot to do with how quickly your brain registers that the ball has left and how quickly you are to the ball. And Horford is that. Smart. Scotty Barnes did not sit for the entire second half. Admittedly, this is a consequence of the fact that he is, now going to be your best wing defender with OG Anunoby suffering that ankle jam. They called it an ankle jam. It's tough, right? Because 24 minutes straight, he did not have a great second half. I think he tried really hard on defense. At one point, he shut down a 3-on-1 fast break by himself. I thought that was very impressive. His defensive effort overall has been pretty good for the last month. It started out, the season not so great. There were a lot of, late rotations, but his effort has been there. Absolutely. And he could just do so much with his length, even when his lateral quickness is getting exposed a little bit. I think he leaked a little bit of oil against Malcolm Brogdon. But again, this is ball skills, a lead guard, even though he's a little bit older now, just the ball handling. There was a period early in the game where he really got in trouble in the backcourt when he was bringing the ball up the court, when Peyton Pritchard really just got into him. There's a thing about being a taller ball handler when you put up like really small guys under you, especially pesky, quick jitterbug types. It can make it really hard to even move. And while in the post, you would think that would be an advantage, bringing the ball up the court. It obviously got to him because the next 4 times or 5 times up the court, he just gave it up and he did not want to even bother with that. So I thought that was interesting. And probably for those of us in the Scotty should be full-time point guard camp, that might be the one thing that you might look at and say, his ball handling needs to get a lot better. That late timeout by Nick Nurse, and I'm not talking about the timeout that was lost due to, contesting or, trying to ask for a review. I'm not talking about that. I am talking, however, about the one that he called when Grant Williams went down. I understand. You have one possession. You want to shore up your defense. However, if you're paying attention to the game, you've been killing them in transition. You're in transition. You've got 5-on-4 in transition. They are missing their three of their top 4 defenders, in my opinion. Tatum is out. Smart is out. Rob Williams is out. Okay. Yes, I agree that Al Horford is still a guy who can present some issues at the rim. But 5-on-4 transition, you call a timeout, you take this loss. Nick Nurse, this one's on him. Also, there's a certain guy who went 3 for 3, Joe Weiskamp, in the last game. And I don't understand why he didn't play today. I would have understood if the Celtics were at full strength. You might consider matchups. You might say, oh, they're just too good offensively everywhere. But you're telling me you couldn't have hit Joe Weiskamp on Peyton Pritchard? You saw both teams down numbers. The Celtics went deeper into their bench. To those of you saying that the Celtics have this great bench and the Raptors just lack this great bench, trust me. Tonight, with the numbers out, it wasn't about the Celtics having these great guys off the bench. Yes, Malcolm Brogdon is better than anyone who comes off your bench. I agree. But Luke Cornett is probably worse than anyone who comes off your bench. And they found a way to make him useful. Blake Griffin probably wouldn't be playing for us. Jeff Doughton, Jonathan McClain making a very good point. Let me try to make you moderator. Hold on. Let me see if I can do that right now. Jonathan. I don't seem to know how to do this. We're going to figure that out afterwards. Yesterday we did a live stream. It did not go well. I'm going to get to that. And then we're going to get to some calls. We had Tamberlin and Coach Mo. Coach Mo, welcome back. We haven't seen you for a couple games, so looking forward to what you had to say about this. Yesterday we did a live stream. We're trying to break down some stats and analytics, and we got mass spammed. Mass spammed to the point where I had to press the block button like close to 45 times, 50 times, 60 times. It was crazy. And I just lost any sort of flow or concentration in what I was talking about, had to remove the stream, and now I'm pretty much going to have to edit it down. So that will hopefully be out tomorrow. I have to look at it again just to see if it's even salvageable. It's really frustrating when that happens. So I would like to kindly ask that everyone in this community just be kind and respectful. If you have a disagreeing opinion, obviously I'm a very big proponent for freedom of speech. I believe you should be able to say whatever the hell you want to say, provided it does not infringe on someone else's rights to speak. It is impossible for me to run a live stream and have someone mass spamming with like 35 comments in like 2 seconds, wiping out the chat. It's impossible for me to see what people are doing. To the back end of the show, as I had mentioned, we're gonna try to stick to the format that we agreed on a couple of streams ago, where we're gonna try to keep calls to 5 to 10 minutes maximum. If you'd like to call in, I believe the link is right there. I'm gonna put the link in the chat. It's also in the description. Towards the back end of this, I do want to cover spacing, specifically how teams can navigate having non-shooters on the court and not have massive spacing issues. Because the Raptors do have spacing issues, congestion issues. Yeah, so if you have anything to say, by all means, call in. Let's be respectful. I have made some adjustments to the live stream. Number one, if you'd like to comment, you have to be a subscriber. This might be temporary, this might be permanent. Number two, we turn slow chat on or slow mode on, which means that you cannot comment more than once every 15 seconds. Hopefully this will limit the 20 messages in like 10 second stuff. That was really annoying. Jonathan has generously volunteered to be a moderator. I will figure out, hopefully by the end of the stream, how to make him a moderator. And yeah, so okay, let's get to Coach Mo, and then we'll get to Timberland. Coach Mo, how are you doing?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Well, first thing I want to say is the Wizards are up by 22. So when they win tonight, we are sole possession of sixth best odds, which gives us a 37.2% chance of the top four picks. So I'm going to open with that. So
I
silver.
mean,
Silver.
if are you super? How okay on a scale of 1 to 10, how superstitious are you? Superstitious.
When I'm actually not, but when it comes to basketball, I am.
Okay, well, do you know that the team in the 7th spot has moved up in 4 consecutive years, if I'm not mistaken?
Okay, and then what has the sixth best odds? What have they done?
I don't think they've moved up. I think they just moved down to 7.
Really? Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Someone correct me in the chat, but definitely the 7th. And the Raptors were 7th when they moved up to 4 to draft Scotty, and I believe the Kings were 7th last year when they moved up to draft Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray, shout out Timberland calling Keegan exploding, and then he goes off, I think, for a bunch of
Yeah,
threes.
he
I
had
think it
like
was the last.
29. Yeah.
He had 29 points. I think did he go 8 for 10 from three? It was
He
something crazy.
Yeah, something. Yeah, a lot of catch and shoots on the move for a guy his size.
I hate to say it, I still wouldn't have taken him top 5, but still, good for him. Shout outs to Iowa basketball for that, but yes. So what are your takeaways on tonight's game?
Um, One thing I noticed, the you were talking about spacing, and I noticed that like a closing lineup of Siakam, Thad, Barnes, and Precious seems a bit rough in terms of spacing. I know OG was out. I was wondering where you know, Weiskamp, where was he?
Calling him Wheezy now.
Yeah,
Eh?
we're calling him Wheezy F baby,
Fred,
but
Fred called him Joe Exotic.
yeah, I never watched that. So, but and Nurse is just like, I swear he wakes up, and whatever he's feeling like, that's what the subs are that day. Um, I Today Flynn got 5 minutes. He just appeared randomly like a legendary Pokemon. He just sticks his head out, and then he just jumps on the court. Um, and then no Wheezy. It's just I just think those four guys, Siakam, Thad, Barnes, Precious, is just pretty bad spacing. I think the overlap between Thaddeus Young and Scotty Barnes is just way too much.
Mm.
Neither of them provide spacing, and Barnes,
Scotty hit 2 threes today.
Scotty would hit two threes. I just why couldn't Barnes be the guy setting the screens for Siakam, and they were running a lot of Siakam fat action, right? A lot. And I know Barnes was tired. He played the entire fourth, but
Hmm.
I just thought it was a lot of Siakam, just over and over again. Like he's the level of player that Luka Doncic is, which I don't think he is, but we're featuring him like that. I know Fred's out, and then OG came up, but I just thought it was too much Siakam, too much. It was over and over and over again with bad spacing. But what do you think?
I agree with you that they have a lot of pieces that pretty much want to operate in the exact same places on the court. I think this just comes down to what Leo called good life fitness basketball, right? No structure. It's not that Thaddeus Young cannot be moved to the corner. It's just he doesn't have a great deal of gravity there. I think that what makes the spacing issues worse, and we're going to get into this later, but since you're a coach, we're going to talk to you about it now. When you have, okay, finish, let's see if you can complete my sentence. When you're a non-shooter, you should cut into
To the paint.
space.
Yeah, into space. Yeah.
Cut into space. It's a concept as old as time itself, and honestly, it's been a principle in any game in basketball, because when you cut into space, especially going towards the basket if you're a non-shooter, going away from the basket if you are a shooter, then what this can do is it forces the defense to shift and adapt. During yesterday's stream, we talked about a particular play where Scotty, has Weiskamp bring his man up so
Yeah.
that and then Siakam and Precious pull away to clear a path to the basket because there was really no one in the paint to contest the dunk. I think these principles are just, I want to say they're normal for any high level Division One athlete to just pick up as second nature, really. The Raptors have a lot of players who, without the ball, just are consistently doing the wrong thing,
Yes, I was gonna
right?
say. I was gonna mention. You have to know when to cut.
Number one, you have to know when to cut. Number
Yes.
two, the player with the ball needs to know when to go.
Yeah.
The whole thing about that Scotty play with Wieskamp, let me see if I can bring it up right now just so that everyone can see what I'm talking about. And that way, like, we have some understanding. This thing about that play, which we broke down yesterday, was the timing of when Barnes went on that play. I'm going to try to see if I can bring it up here. Um, let's move it up.
Also, we don't adapt much. I mean, Pritchard was guarding Barnes up the court, right? Making life difficult on him.
Hmm.
By the way, you were talking about his ball handling needs to be better. I know a lot of players who've spoken about Muggsy Bogues picking them up full court. No one likes that. Even point guards hated Muggsy Bogues.
Well,
They hated him.
Muggsy is to a normal point guard what Pritchard is to Scotty
Yeah,
or
but
Pascal,
my
right?
point is,
Because the point here is the whole thing with taller ball handlers is always that the distance between the floor and your
yes,
hand, you have to get low. Scotty
yes,
needs to get lower as a ball
yes,
handler. Tracy adjusted to that because he was 6'8". He came in as I want to say an average ball handler. He became a very good ball handler by the time he got to Orlando. And you often saw that because he's 6'8", he would often compress his body, get very low, and then explode. Scotty is too upright.
yes,
OG
yes,
is too upright. Thad also is too upright. All of these guys, they need to get lower in their stance when they're dribbling against smaller defenders. Otherwise, it's going to limit how much burst you have on your first step. I'm not a basketball trainer, but this is just basic common
yeah, yeah, yeah.
knowledge.
Mhm.
If you look at the screen, if you look at the screen right now, you can see my screen, right?
Yes,
Okay. So in this play, so right now we're going to see, I'm just going to backtrack just a touch here. This is the previous play, my bad. And so right now you're going to see Scotty, and he has a one-on-one matchup here. Now, if he were to do what I think Precious in this situation would do, even Siakam, OG, like these guys don't have the greatest rhythm for when to time their attacks. So right now, if he was to attack, then there's so many defenders in the way, right? There's two defenders that are currently guarding Siakam and I believe that's OG. And then there's another defender that's kind of on Weiskamp as and who can easily rotate over, and then that could result in a charge. So what Scotty waits for is timing, right? So he's going to wait for these guys to go
To clear out.
to clear out. That's the first step of this. Now he is just dribbling the ball. Now there's a very big difference between Scotty dribbling the ball and a lot of other guys dribbling the ball. The other guys dribble the ball, it's sort of aimlessly dribbling the ball. And I'm not saying Scotty's the only guy who does it. There's a couple of times where Fred VanVleet has read this action correctly. But the second part of this is to clear that final defender out of the way. Now watch when Weiskamp comes up, boom, perfect timing. It's not a screen. It's not a screen. He just needed to lift his defender up. And basically, Scotty attacks this. So instead of going super wide, he actually goes closer to the defender, almost using the Minnesota defender as a screener. Look at this. Boom.
And then you'd also have to ask yourself, why is I think is that Nas Reed or Prince? Why is he guarding him Barnes that far out? That's another question.
That is the big thing, right? Because I've always said that for Scotty to take that ascent, next level ascent, he's going to have to become a threat from out there. Otherwise, it's not going to really unlock his game. It's not going to help his teammates. However, yeah. So tonight, I think the Raptors played pretty well tonight. I know some people will discount this win because Marcus Smart was out in the first half. Robert Williams was out. I don't think those guys being in would have made this game like that much closer. I think the Raptors played a competitive game. To conclude and move on like to the next caller, I do want to ask you, what did you think of that final play with Siakam? Like the Barnes inbounding to Siakam, because I can tell you right now, I read that play from a million miles away.
Do you think Thad made it harder or easier for him? Because Siakam rejected the screen, so it actually made it worse. Right? It was a little congested there. Maybe if Thad wasn't there, he just takes the full head of steam and tries. But it was like almost like three defenders.
I would have preferred to use Siakam as a decoy there and go to Trent.
Well, as Raptors fans know, Siakam is notoriously bad in like last second clutch situations. So is Fred. So it's a tough thing, and they're the two top dogs. So they're gonna get first cracks at it, and more often than not, like a lot more often than not, it's gonna get ugly. Mm-hmm. The last thing I want to say though is Barnes has been our second best player or top two player at the very least this month, and the ball never.
Who's our first best player?
Yeah, I'm just trying to be,
But who is our first best player? If he's second,
I'd say Barnes. Our feature guy Siakam. I just thought
he
wasn't involved in the second half. It was like Achua was touching the ball more, and obviously Barnes needs to be more assertive. You can make that argument.
I mean, I'll flash the numbers right on the screen prior to tonight's game.
I agree. He's number one. I just, for the Siakam fans, I said top two, and you can decide for yourself. But
you wanted to limit the spam. Okay, thank you. Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah,
I just felt like Pritchard or Brogdon was on Barnes so much, and we never once posted it up. We've never scrapped anything and be like, let's attack that matchup. It's like we're just like, we don't react. We just do what we're gonna do, and we don't adjust to anything. And I just don't think the coaching staff or the team makes Barnes' life easier. It's like, you fend for yourself, but we're gonna feature Siakam, and we're gonna give him all the opportunities that he can get, and then people are going to be like, 26, 8, and 8. And it's like, of course, his numbers are going to look shiny. His raw stats are always going to look good. The amount of times he touches the ball, they're always going to look nice. He's going to make the All-Star team.
Yeah. I mean, we've transitioned from soft MVP candidate to definitive all NBA to he's definitely going to make the All-Star team. This hasn't been great. I wonder if
manufactured numbers. If you're watching them, they're force feeding him over and over and over and over again. Which is okay, but it's like, there's other guys who are playing well and they can do things. It's like,
he's
not on an island by himself.
G making a pretty good point here. He says Scotty as a point guard has a harder time due to his handle, not an insult, but as a point forward, he has an easier time. He will get better, but to me, that's why he has a tougher time as a guard.
He doesn't have to dribble it up the court. Like, I mean, that's not what that's.
I mean, ideally, because of, okay, so credit where credit is due. There's a couple times today where One of the things that I think the Raptors absolutely need to do, and I called it out in yesterday's game, is get out in transition and do some of those early leak outs and those throw ahead passes. Siakam did that a couple times today, and that was really good because usually, I mean, even though sometimes the execution is not perfect and the pass is a little bit long, I will take that gamble with the Raptors. Usually, like when you consider the Raptors from positions 4 to 2, usually they're bigger than the other team,
Yeah.
especially when they're playing big. Usually means that the guy leaking out is probably going to be a little bit taller and have like a little bit of a height advantage on the guy who is guarding him. So I think that throw ahead pass that Barnes likes to throw every now and again, Siakam's
Yeah.
growing comfortable doing that. I think that's a good way for the Raptors to get 4 to 6 extra points every single game. And honestly, if you're going to get killed by as much as the Raptors did tonight on the bench, like bench points, 3 pointers, everything was really, against the Raptors here. I mean, just quickly to flash this before we get to Timberland, right? The Raptors, they shoot 37% from three. I don't think that's bad. Two of those, I believe, came from Scotty Barnes, 7 for 19, but, it's still 7 versus 16, right? You took fewer threes. You don't have Fred VanVleet in the game. You lose OG Anunoby. Those are two of your best 3-point shooters, right? And, Siakam's, not really hitting it well from three right now. So, yeah, but I mean, you give up 45%, but at least this time you don't give up 50% from the field. I think the paint defense was just so much better today. The
Yeah.
Raptors win the, field goal attempts battle by one. They're dead even on the rebounds, which, again, credit to Precious Achua. He had 11, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he had 11
Yeah.
tonight. They win the turnover battle. They're even. They're dead even on the steals and blocks. Right? They had 24 assists tonight. The Celtics had 25. I mean, I think Jaylen Brown was pretty bad for the Celtics tonight. I think he picked up his dribble far too often, and Precious Achua just did such a great job on him. Like such a great job on him. I am at a point now where I don't know if this is hyperbole or if this is just me being insane, but I think Precious Achua did a better job on him than I think I've ever seen OG Anunoby do on him.
The
Just there's some lateral burst with Achua and
Yeah.
his
Chu's our best
length.
raw athlete. He's our best raw athlete by far.
Yeah, but I mean, like the fact that he's now putting it together at such a young age. I think he's still 23. For him to be putting it together, that it's just a competent defensive package. I really like what I saw from him tonight. Again, decision making still shit, but
Yeah.
paint defense, perimeter defense,
Rebounding.
rebounding, best rebounder on the team by a country mile, and him. He has made the Raptors very competitive.
And he's one of the few guys like Gary.
Mhm.
Precious has this irrational confidence that sometimes can go the opposite way. But
Yes.
I'd rather have that than no confidence. I'd rather that. But
Yes. Someone said Precious is 21. He is definitely not. He's definitely not. I mean, I can just Google that really
and
quickly just to
before I
be.
leave, I have a question.
Yep.
Do we win the game if Weiskamp takes Thad's minutes to close the game?
Yes.
I agree too. So nurses,
Yes.
nurses, with the tank. Got it.
Yep. Got it. All right. Thanks, Mo.
All right.
Appreciate it, man. All right. Next up, we got Timberland. Again, to anyone who wants to dial in, I'm going to put the link in the description. The link is in the description, and the link is also in the chat. If you'd like to call in, we have no callers after Timberland, so you'll be moved up. Timberland, what's up?
Hey, did you get my DM before the game?
I did not.
I pulled a Rob. I've been up 40 hours because I was writing all night. So when I saw that Fred wasn't playing, I was like, okay, I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to stay up and watch.
Okay.
Because I had a feeling that it was going to be a competitive game, which it was.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys touched on some of the things that I said, but because I'm tired, can I just run through my points and then we can
Absolutely.
talk?
Absolutely. Let's
Okay.
go.
So the bench outscored us 62-14, and Matt and Jack kept bringing up how great the Celtics bench was and how ours wasn't living up to expectations or making those illusions. But Malcolm Brogdon and Grant Williams would be starters on about 20 NBA teams. So let's put that in perspective, first
You
of
think
all.
Grant would start on 20 teams?
Well, not Grant, Malcolm would. Grant would start at least on 10. at
Yeah,
least.
I can give you that. Yep.
Yeah. And thanks for the shout out about Keegan. I also called Isaiah. He almost won the game for
Isaiah
the
Joe.
Thunder.
Yep. Yep. Yes, you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. The Raps won the points in the paint 54-36. We
Mm-hmm.
won the fast break 21-16. You already brought up the turnovers, which we scored 6 extra points on. The only major areas that the Celtics really outshone us on were the 3-point shooting, where they had, I think they had 15 and we had 7, and on the offensive glass, but it evened out overall in the rebounds.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to complain about the refs, but we got 7 free throws the entire game. Grant Williams got 8. So,
You know what?
and
I think
that
they were
inadvertent,
more aggressive. I will say that. To be fair, I personally didn't find the refing to be egregious tonight. I didn't find it to be imbalanced.
I didn't think it
Um,
was terrible, and I hate to complain about it, but there was calls they allowed on Grant that were just ticky tack calls, and there was guys getting banged. And Nurse complained about this post game about how the physicality in the paint, where the guys were getting banged around and hit, like that whole Nick Nurse explained that whole challenge. He asked the one rep, "Can I challenge this?" And the rest said yes if you call a timeout. So Nurse said, "Okay, I call a timeout." Then Malloy came over and said, "No, you can't challenge that." And he said, "So I don't want the timeout." And the first ref said, "No, you already called it." So he got screwed twice on that. But that's another point I'll make about Nurse. I thought Gary had it.
can I counter with that?
Yeah, yeah.
That wasn't a foul on Al Horford.
Okay.
I don't think that was a foul on Al Horford. I'm just going to throw it
with
out
the
there.
replay I saw, he hit Pascal's wrist, and he bumped him before. And the same type of play was given to Brogdon twice to go to the line on getting bumped in the
So
paint.
you definitely think it was a foul? Okay.
Chat. No, I would have called it a play on, but I also would have called Brogdon's and a couple of G Will's play ons too.
Okay, I'm just going to ask the chat, was it a foul? I'm very curious to know what Raptor fans think. I personally, I saw like he hit ball. I mean, there might have been incidental contact on the hand, but they usually don't call that.
Yeah, I'm fine if they don't call it on either side. But if you're going to call it one way on one end, let's put it this way. I felt like the Celtics got the home whistle. They're the best team in the league. They probably earned that. And it falls back on Nurse. As we've said, there was no Weiskamp. There was no Doughton. Why you're not putting guys in that could get you some easy points to rest Scotty for a few extra minutes is beyond me. But I'm also of the thought that maybe this is almost on purpose by Nurse to purposely put the guys that he wants into situations where they get experience because he is trying to tank. I don't know. We don't know what the background situation is, whether or not Nurse is contributing.
Who the hell tanks with your franchise cornerstone playing 24 minutes? Now, I don't have a science background. I don't have a medical background, but I'll tell you right now that the occurrence of injuries goes up for every minute you play. I think after like 16 or 17 straight minutes, like you look at the
I'm not saying it's smart.
It's definitely not smart. I mean, if OG misses tomorrow night, you really are screwed because you have nobody that can guard their front court. Like, okay, hold on. Actually, Precious Achiuwa will be a very good. If Fred is missing tomorrow night, I think the Raptors will be pretty competitive against New York tomorrow because
the Dubs went into Cleveland and won without 4 of their 5 starters, so you never know.
I mean,
we're not the Dubs.
You know what? This, lost in all of this talk about how great the Celtics bench was tonight, consider how many points their starters scored.
Yeah, I know.
Just look at it. I mean, first of all, the bench points is such a misnomer. Like, okay, just to count this out for everybody. Al Horford had 5 points. Robert Williams had 2 points. Marcus Smart had 2 points. Derek White had 8 points. That is a combined total of 17 points from 4 starters not named Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown had more points. So yeah. So when
about the half, there was only one Celtic that was in double figures, and it was Jaylen Brown with 13. Every other starter didn't have double figures, and 4 of our 5 had double figures.
Absolutely.
The bench was 28 to like I think 10 or something like that.
To me, Malcolm Brogdon and Grant Williams were starters in this game. They played more minutes than OG Anunoby. They played almost as many minutes as Precious Achiuwa. Like they were 34 and 35 minutes. I think they were kind of like makeshift starters once Rob Williams and Marcus Smart went out. And honestly, if Marcus Smart and Rob Williams had not gone out, maybe Rob Williams ends up with 10 points. Maybe Marcus Smart ends up with 12 points. And we're not talking about this massive bench disparity. It was always going to be a bit of a disparity because of, the talent gap. I mean, you're missing, Precious Achiuwa has been one of the biggest reasons why our bench has made a bit of a comeback. And now he's a starter, right? So, and yeah.
Which is one of my last points.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the 2 players that stood out for me were Gary and Precious. Gary, for me, that he's not going to be your top player, but for him to score 22 points, get 5 rebounds, 3 assists, which is big for him, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. That's about, if he did that every game, we'd be jumping up and down for joy. As for Precious, to me, this game was the writing on the wall to say he should be starting.
Over who? Who's he starting over? That's the question. I mean, you're saying Gary's great, so it's not
Fred.
over Gary. Over Fred. Okay. All right.
But I mean, let's just say, let's put it this way: if they
that's
trade
never
Fred,
happening, right?
I know, but I still would like to see him starting. I really would. I like Scotty and him together on the floor. As far if there's
Never
a positive
passes to him.
takeaway, who Scotty doesn't?
No, Precious never. Like there were so many periods during the game where Scotty went like 4, 5, 6 stretches down the court and didn't touch the ball. They played on one side of the floor. It was very weird to watch. And like there's an article which was released recently. I can't remember who it's by, but they talked about how they talked to a rival player who described the Raptors as not being the same team anymore that they're usually used to, that there seems to be connectivity issues. Now, I will tell you that when you watch a team that's connected, that's vibing off the court, it looks different. The breaks, when there's a dead ball, you'll see the communication between those guys. It's very transparent. It's very difficult to, hide that. So the connectivity shows up on defense. It shows up on communication on defense. It shows up on doing little things on offense to help your team, right? Basketball is a team sport. It's one of the biggest team sports in terms of actually how one guy who is not in a scoring position can amplify the impact of a guy who is in a scoring position. I think basketball might be one of the most, basketball and football to me are 2 sports specifically where the guy without the ball really could help the guy catching the ball. And I guess I don't know about hockey and soccer enough to be able to firmly make that debate, but it would be a very interesting thought. So,
maybe Precious. It could be partially IQ, but it could also be Precious wants minutes, and he knows he has to pass to other players, like to keep Pascal happy, to keep Gary happy, in order to get those minutes.
I mean, obviously the messaging to these guys is pretty clear. Be aggressive. That seems to be the talking point in every single post-game pressers. Be aggressive, and the problem with that is, aggression, offensive aggression, and offensive toughness. Right, Al Horford talked about offensive toughness and shot making being the thing that has weathered the Celtics. I believe the Celtics have now won 9 straight without Jayson Tatum.
Yeah.
So this is a team
not
that
without him the whole time. Just
no.
What do you mean?
They've won 9 straight in games that he's
wasn't
missed.
This their 9th one in a row? That's what I was thinking. Sorry.
I can double check that. But I think this is one of those things where you need players to buy into different roles. I think what Scotty was doing, I talked about it yesterday, where, Scotty agreed to be the screen setter, facilitator, not really a shot taker. You need someone like that in your lineup. I don't think adding Precious Achiuwa into the lineup does that for you. It's just adds another guy who wants to take 15 to 20 shots. I think having some balance.
I just love his defense. I love how he doesn't let anyone get easy lay-ins in the paint. And how many times did he stop fast breaks tonight, and Scotty did too. Scotty played some great defense tonight. Of course, he's not as good on the guards, but I mean,
Hmm.
overall, I thought I would have given him an A on his defense overall. Pascal was one rebound away from a triple double, and he took over in the second quarter when they needed him to, which was a positive. He did those pitch aheads, which are positives. But I wonder if we look at all the times this season where the Raptors go into those, it didn't happen as much tonight where they go into those funks where they don't score at all, but
Hmm.
how much of it is related to the fact that guys are just standing around? Precious,
Right.
OG, Gary, Scotty. How many times did Pascal force his own shot? And how much of that is tied to him
I
wanting
saw
to.
your tweet about that. I just want to correct myself here. The Celtics are 2-1 this season without Jason Tatum. The ninth
Yeah,
straight is yeah.
I didn't think he
I
missed
was
that many
like
games.
he hasn't. Okay, yeah. So they're 2-1. So they've won against
Might be Brown, Jalen
yeah.
Brown, maybe.
So they no. So they won against Washington. They lost against Orlando without him, and I remember that game very clearly because I was shocked out of
Hmm.
my mind that Orlando went into Boston.
And won
Um,
both.
and won both, which was crazy.
Yeah,
And they won against Toronto tonight, so they're just beating up on the bottom end of the East, I guess.
the bottom and
Yeah.
the top.
I mean, is
Yeah.
Washington the
So
top
I
now?
mean, no. Oh, they went into Boston. Magic went into Boston and won both games in Boston.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm tired. Yeah,
yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean,
But yeah, I don't know whether Pascal is trying to uh, get those points for the All-Star berth, because when you think back to last year when they played the 76ers, Pascal had a couple of bad games to start the series. Scotty was out. Gary wasn't feeling well, missed a game, came back. Fred finally went out. As the series progressed, Pascal was much better when two guys were coming on to him at moving the ball quickly and making quicker decisions. And I wonder how much of this is based on just the emotional part of dealing with maybe Fred's leaving or maybe he could be traded. How much of it is tied to him wanting to make an all-star team, and maybe that's part of his contract that he reaches a different bonus
he's
level if he gets on the
he's
all-star team.
taking fewer shots. I just think that too many
But
times,
he's
and I
forcing shots. He's not making smart decisions, and he's letting his guys get cold standing around watching him. And I mean, I think he has the capacity to do those things, and he had a great line tonight. There's no denying that. But
mhm.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, that's the main points that I had. I could go on, but I'll just leave it at that. And you have
Get
them that
some.
you want to specifically discuss?
No, I think you should get some sleep for sure because I've yesterday one of the major components of why that live stream went so disastrously was I had no sleep. We did a 4 a.m.
Oh,
to anyone who's curious to check
what
to
was
hear
the
more
stream
from
about?
Tamberlin. Yesterday's stream was about the analytics and it was a film breakdown of what bad offense and good offense looks like for the Raptors and it was just kind of showing like how Siakam's numbers have taken a bit of a nosedive relative to his high MVP caliber, um, what other players, I guess, in that conversation, like just to sort of
To
look
start the
at,
season,
yeah,
yeah.
like I mean, from box plus minus to warp, I mean, I can easily flash some of those numbers for anyone who's curious, like stuff we were talking about, which was like
It's about the
Siakam.
last 8 games or so, eh?
A lot of it is, but it's been pretty consistent. So just throwing this up there. Are you seeing the screen? You're seeing the screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so I
just
mean
switched
like
off my
100
notes.
115th in defensive box plus minus.
That's terrible.
Win shares per 48. He's all the way down there. In box plus minus, I mean, we have some guys ahead of him like Lauri Markkanen that you could not imagine at the start of the season could even be in the same conversation as him.
I'm surprised
Um,
Donovan Mitchell was ahead of him on that.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of Raptors differential, consistent like they're 27th in assist differential, which I think is just really a symptom of the type of basketball that they play. But then how
Mm.
aggressively ahead they are in terms of field goal attempts differential and steals differential, I think is just nuts. And yeah, so like I mean, and then obviously they're terrible in defending the 3-point line. They give up I mean, look at that, right? Like their opponent profile,
Wow,
it's insane, in terms of
that's
field goal.
crazy.
But they're great at limiting offensive rebounds. So they're aggressively shoring up one side of it, Like they're getting steals, they're taking more shots, they're winning the possession battle every single night by a landslide.
But they're not
And
finishing.
yeah, and their point differential is I think 0.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. For
like
a long
so
time, they were in the green, but they're not anymore. You're right.
right, they are the dividing line. I think they're 17th. Tonight doesn't really move it much because they lose by 2. But this is a symptom of a team that's losing a lot of close games, right? And they're not,
Yeah. I think
they're winning in
they've won
blowouts.
three. I think they've only won 3 games where they were in clutch in the last, like clutch time, the last 5 minutes. I think it was
Right.
something like 3 games. It was ridiculous. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
even the Jazz with a mediocre team who's been in 34 clutch games, which is crazy in itself, have
mhm.
won, I think, 15 of them.
Yeah.
So, and that's a mediocre team. The other thing about Boston that really stands out is, I mean, we did try to get Brogdon this summer.
Hmm.
Toronto was one of the teams that aggressively pursued him in free agency. He wanted to go to Boston, which, makes sense. But you can see how having 1 or 2 bench guys that are capable of coming in and fulfilling roles can change the dynamic of a team.
Hmm.
And part of that is we just don't have the personnel. Part of that is Nick Nurse and who he chooses to give minutes to. And one of my major points was, where the hell is Joe Weiskamp? I mean, I've been on the free Jeff Doughton Jr. train for a long time now. So, I mean, if you got these guys, yes, some guys may not be playing on other teams,
Hmm.
but they're on your roster. They're getting paid. Give them an opportunity and instill them with some confidence, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, to answer this question here, do you still consider Pascal a top 20 player? I do.
Yeah.
I think so much of what's going on with him is a result of also the offense around him, like the players around him and how much they're helping or hurting him. I
Mm-hmm.
think the Raptors play a lot of really funky lineups since like I've been like really digging into play styles around the NBA, sort of watching the Warriors offense, watching Boston, just watching good examples of really good offensive teams. There was a question
Take some
during
time to
yesterday.
check out the Thunder.
I know you're a Thunder fan. Yes.
It's,
And
it's just because I see a lot of them because I write about them. So
Can can I, can I ask you a
just
Thunder related
because,
question before you leave?
yeah,
I have a theory. I want to shit test it against you here. My
yeah.
theory is that Josh Giddey is hella overrated. What do you think of that?
Prior to the
Impact,
last, prior to
impact
the
wise,
last, I don't think he's a great defender, but
that
he's
is
got
besides the
guys
point.
on
But
his team that are. But prior to the last 10 or 15 games, I would have agreed with that. However, I've seen a real jump from him recently while they've been winning. And he's been the one collecting the triple doubles and dishing the dimes and hitting shots,
have you seen the
showing
on
up.
off splits with him and Shea?
Yes, and I forget because I'm tired. But they don't. They're not good when they're better when Josh sits versus when Shea sits. But
Yes.
it has improved in the last couple of games or last, let's say
I
10
was
to
just
15
curious.
games.
I was just curious because Josh is a really good defensive rebounder. He's obviously in positions in that offense to play
Great
make.
passer.
Really good passer. And I think that because of being a tall ball handler, I think sometimes, he has an advantage unlocked, even though he's taken a step as a shooter. Also, he has
Yeah,
obviously evolved as a 3-point shooter. I think last year he was in the 20s, this year he's in the 30s. However, I will say that his impact has not been anywhere close to Scotty. But what's interesting,
agree.
Or Franz, or Alperen Şengün, or
Well, I
or
wanted them to
or
draft. I wanted them
or
to draft
or Trey
Sengun. So
Murphy, or there's a lot of young players who are actually impacting winning. He's not one of them, and now I don't even buy the excuse of he's not on a winning team because they're sort of winning. I mean,
he
they're
suits.
firmly in the play-in conversation.
He really
So
suits SGA though. Like he's a really good counter to him because Shea can play point guard if he wants to. That's what his
yes.
natural position. Although I think he's more of a shooting guard.
Hmm.
But because Giddy is so good with his passes, and right now because the last 10, 15 games they've been playing so well,
Hmm.
he's developed confidence. And I find that Giddy is the player on that team along with Lou, actually, who is
Mhm.
most impacted by confidence. When things are going well and everyone's up, he is much more aggressive offensively. He takes the right shots. He makes the right plays. When things aren't going well for him personally or go off a little bit for the team, you see it take a downward dive. So in that regard, he can be streaky, shall we
Mhm.
say. But I have gained more respect. It's almost like a Gary Trent Jr. thing with me, where I was off and then I've gained more respect. Do I think he's the best point guard or a top 10 point guard? No. But I do think that he suits that team well, and he's 6'8". So the height, he's getting better defensively as in the team environment. We'll
Right.
put it that way.
There was a comment in the chat about Harden being washed. I suggest you watch more Philadelphia play. He is
He's not
not.
washed, but I still don't think he'll perform well in the playoffs outside the first round. They've been playing
I
really
think
well
he's been
lately.
incredible this year. I mean, his playmaking in terms
You
of
think his
like
step is there? I don't think his step is back.
I think I think it's getting there, but he has been so much better this year than he's been in the previous 2 seasons. His numbers, his Lone Star numbers prove it. He has just been so good in terms of playmaking, facilitating. I think he's
Did you
just
Did you
pardon?
see that Houston came out and said that they're not going to trade Eric Gordon because James Harden is so close to Eric Gordon that they want to keep him as part of their pitch to get Harden? Poor Eric Gordon. He can't leave Houston. They have him handcuffed.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, they James Harden is not going back to Houston. Get
I
out of
will
here.
give James credit for the passing. I mean, I used to have to write a lot about Houston too, and I I I went through a lot of nightmare games having to watch that dribble, 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 dribble,
Someone
dribble,
said
dribble,
Philly
crossover, dribble,
benched
dribble.
Maxi. Is this true? What? Sorry, I
Yeah,
happen to
he's
watch.
coming off, and they didn't bench him. He's coming off the bench now.
It's just because of injury.
No, because while he was out injured, they had what's the guy's name
Melton.
with the sideburns? Yeah. Sorry, they had. I was thinking of Jevon Carter. Yeah, they had D'Anthony Melton starting, and because of his defensive uptick, when they have both Maxey and Harden starting, the defensive lapses are there. So because
I
Maxey
actually
isn't a
agree with
great,
that so
Maxey
much.
could be a better defender if he's so athletic. I don't know whether it's a mindset, IQ, but yeah, they have him coming off the bench. They want to turn him into
Lateral
more of a
quicks are a
six man.
different. Lateral quicks are a different thing, right? Like you can say
God, Precious was good on that tonight.
Scotty's north south burst is so much better than his east west burst. So it's like it's
Mm-hmm.
different muscles being activated. But anyways, thanks a lot, Timberland. I hope you get some sleep. I really enjoyed this conversation
I'll
as
be up for a
always.
while because I still have things to write. But yeah, I just thought I'd
Leave
share
us
that
on in
with
the
you.
background. Thanks a lot.
Okay, hon.
Cheers. Bye. Okay, I'm gonna put the link in the chat here again. Next up, we have Marco coming on. Okay. Hey, Marco, what's up?
Hey, Robert, how are you doing?
I'm good. I just want to address one comment quickly. Jason Chow says, "You guys are crazy. One hand, you think Siakam's top 20. The other hand, you refuse to pay the max for him." Also, if it's the 25% max, no, I do not. If it's just 35% max, actually, you're paying for future value and not just next year value. You're paying for the year after for the next 4 or 5 years. I think that's a very different conversation than asking if the guy's top 20 right now. Also, I do believe that the 35% of the cap type of supermax should be reserved for top 15 players in their primes. So that complicates things because now you were talking about a top 20 player who is, in my opinion, again, it's just his projection, is going to exit his prime sometime in the next 2 years. You will be paying for the non-prime version of a top 20 player. Yes, I do have an issue with 35% of the cap for that. Anyways, just to address that. Yeah, so Marco, what'd you think of the game tonight? What'd you want to talk about?
Three different areas, quick. First, on a personal level, I just wanted to briefly let you know I felt bad for you about all the nonsense in the past chat with all the spam in there. I tried to put in my comments there for you to just basically take it in stride. Don't let that bother you. I felt bad that had bothered you to the degree it did. For me, maybe
It literally, the
I'm in my
second I get it. Like the second I said it, I said what I said right now. I just had to block two people right now. Here comes three. Just blocked three. That's three people. Keep going. I gotcha. I got all
Well,
of you guys blocked.
I'm in my 50s, eh? So
Hmm.
I'm an older guy a bit, and I just let that stuff roll. Like I don't care. I disagree with quite a number of folks. Some people agree, some people disagree with me on the chat. I just roll with it, man. Right? I
Hmm.
mean, like I said, after a while, you just got to roll with some stuff, Robert. Don't let it bother you. And the direct messaging thing, like you were saying, there was some spam, and we were all thinking maybe it was direct messaging because we weren't seeing some of the spamming after that you were saying you were getting. So we were just wondering if you were getting DM'd somehow because we weren't seeing some of that spam. We even mentioned we couldn't see the spamming that you were talking in the later part of the chat. So
Hmm.
so something was strange there. But anyway, like I said, I'm going to reiterate what I said in a posting a while, not that long ago there, but about the fact that you've got the guts to actually, one of the few media that has the guts to engage with the fan base directly like that, right?
Hmm.
So never forget that, Robert. You got the guts, you got the balls to do stuff that I haven't seen too many other media do. So always know that that's a feather in your cap, and don't let these guys bother you. I dare the other media to engage the fan
It's not
base.
even that they bother me, right? People who get bothered by this stuff are typically people who need validation from other people. I don't need validation. I'm just going to flash it on the screen for everyone who's wondering how many people I'm having to block. That's 3 people I had to block in about I want to say about a minute. I've had to block 7 other people, and then we have people asking why am I blocking people. If you want to come on here and if you want to literally talk about Pascal Siakam, we can do that. Don't swear, don't flash, don't do anything stupid. However, I do want to say that what's bothering me the most about this is how uncomfortable it's making for the chat, because you see, it's a three-pronged thing. Number one, it's obviously a chance for me to talk about the game. Number two, it's a chance for fans to interact with each other in the chat. I think there are a lot of people who come on here and they're not even listening to what I'm saying. They're barely listening. They're just talking to each other. And I love that, because this is what we're trying to do here. Number three is it's a chance for me to actually get to know the community by talking to people like yourself, like Tamberlin, like Coach Mo, like Larry, like whoever. And we have some regulars, but we also have new people come on, like the trade show that we did. I think we had like 10 or 12 new callers. So that is like the really cool part of doing these, and that's why I want to keep doing them forever and ever. It doesn't bother me that people don't agree with me. It doesn't bother me that, once again, I look on Twitter and they're like, oh my God, this guy doesn't have a girlfriend. No one could ever touch this guy. He's so he's so ugly. Fuck, I don't care. Like, I am so perfectly at peace with myself. That stuff doesn't even bother me one bit. But yesterday, I really felt bothered by this, because it felt like, when I was 15, I got held up at gunpoint. And the part about that was not the fear of, oh my God, I'm about to lose my life. It was the feeling that someone is doing something to me and I can't stop it. It's a feeling of powerlessness. It is so frustrating, because now these people just come in and they can just, they have like 20, 30 accounts. And they just pile on one at a time. And I don't even know how the fuck these people are doing this, because you literally have to subscribe now to do this. So this is an orchestrated like attack. I don't know where, and they literally waited for me to say that I wouldn't sign Siakam to a max, and within 12 seconds the spam started. How is this happening? I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but this is crazy. That literally one negative. I was very positive about him for the most part, but when the comment came to, I would not sign him to a supermax contract, it started right away. That is nuts. It's just crazy to me. I'm not like, I hope the people think that I'm not like trying to be conspiratorial. I'm not trying to say like someone's hired someone to do something, but how do you have time to do this? Like, how difficult is that to have like 20, 30 accounts automatically subscribe and comment the same fucking message over and over and over? Yesterday it was like yesterday it was like close to 70 accounts that I had to block. And today it's been like about 14, 15, 16. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, who has the money to do this? Who has the time to do this? It's just crazy. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody, that it's not that it bothers me personally. It's just that I feel like I'm powerless to help this community enjoy the chat.
I
Yeah.
enjoyed the chat. Like I said, I told them straight up to spammers, it's not the way to, have a good argument for Pascal, right?
Hmm.
I mean, like I said, I'd let it just right off me, man. And like I said, you seem to get frustrated a little bit by it yesterday, and
I was.
I just think that, like I said, just let that thing roll, man. Just let it roll right off you. Don't let it bother you. Like I said, I got a bunch of folks that disagree with me. They're chopping away. Just let it roll, man.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The
I don't care
engagement,
that they
the
disagree
engagement.
with me. People disagree with me all the time. I don't care about that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it is making it impossible for the community to have a peaceful chat when somebody, I mean, unless you have top chat turned on. And it also, like, I mean, I want to be able to see what people are saying. If you wanted to see my screen here, I see all the comments coming up. And sometimes people will ask for clarification on something. That makes these chats easier. The problem is when these spam comments come up, my entire screen gets flooded with the spam.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't even see what people
I
are doing.
saw that. Yeah,
So it just, you know, it just makes it next to impossible for me to see what people are doing or people are saying. But it also makes it impossible, I think, if you don't have top chat turned on, you just have all these spammers. And, you know, people have said, you know, get mods. Yes, I mean, that's going to help a little bit. Turn on slow chat. That's helping a little bit, obviously, because every one of these spam comments right now, if I didn't have slow chat turned on, I guarantee you that's like 15 to 20 messages every second. These people, it's crazy. Yeah. But anyways, let's
get
move
in.
on.
I'll get into the next point I wanted to
Yes,
talk about.
please. Let's.
All right, so once again, this is all the eye test, and I guess if you dive into the stats, you can see it as well. There's a reason why Pascal and OG have the more turnovers. On the drive, I've noticed anytime they've got a drive, whether in a transition or they have that opportunity of a nice momentum drive, they're okay and they can finish well. He can do a spin around. He's got some nice moves. Same thing with OG on a drive. OG can finish well. The problem is the weakness that they both have. Pascal does not have as tight a handle as maybe some people think he does. Anytime he gets stopped, the drive gets interrupted, or he's not able to have that drive, and he's got to be a bit more, what do you want to call it, agile, like
Mhm.
in terms of like the
I think
hop.
his handles come a very long way, personally,
He still
Marco.
fumbles. He still
He,
tonight.
he
Tonight I saw him. I saw him awkward under pressure. He fumbled.
can you think of 5, 6'10" okay, 6'9.5" ball handlers who are tighter with their dribble than him?
Yeah,
I can think of definitely Ben Simmons as one.
Kyrie Irving.
He's not 6'9".
No, but I'm just saying. I
No,
don't
no,
care.
but I'm saying like
I
6'9", because taller ball handlers have a difficult time, right, with dribbling, but they also have advantages because they can see over the defense. So I'm just curious,
okay.
like
Scotty Barnes has a better handle, even though people say he doesn't have a good enough handle for point
I
guard.
disagree.
I think Scotty Barnes has a better handle. On
Scott
like I said,
Scott plays 2K has a good suggestion here. Paul George, yes, I agree with that. Someone said Durant.
yeah, Durant for sure.
Okay, yeah.
I
So
think I
Durant,
just
Paul
saying.
George, and yeah, that's
Once again, I want to make sure people understand there's two versions I'm talking about, both for OG and for Pascal and OG, when they're on drives versus when they're in the half court offense or their drive is stopped and then they got to turn into a bit of agility. Like I said, yeah, you're right. Smaller guys can be a lot more agile and they can work with that better. But still, I do.
it's just the distance that the ball has to travel from their hand to the floor. I mean, for taller ball handlers like Tracy McGrady, I mentioned this earlier, they have to get a little bit lower in their stance so that they're dribbling the ball low, which means they're almost hunched over. But if you watch Tracy McGrady attack, someone said bull. I don't think so. But when you watch them like attack, they sort of spring out of that stance when they're going into the attack. And, you know, I used to love watching Tracy McGrady explode off of that dribble in out counter. It wasn't that his handle was like Allen Iverson or Rafer Alston or anything, but I just thought he was. Yeah, someone said Tracy is Tracy though. Yeah, I agree, but Tracy wasn't Tracy early. Luka Doncic is not 6'9". Luka is closer to 6'6". So yeah, that
I
kind of
mean
negates
that's
that.
a very strong argument. I just, like I said, I really zoom in with my eye test on this, and I go with my instincts. My instincts said awkward. Like it was my
Hmm.
first reaction mentally. Awkward. It's awkward. And anyway, I mean,
Mhm.
it kind of lines up as to why, even for guys that play over 20 minutes a game, yeah, I think there's 6 rappers that do it. That they do have the most turnovers, because a lot of Scotty's turnovers are on passing, because Scotty makes I don't want to say dangerous passes, but he makes more challenging passes, and sometimes he gets punished for that by people that they intercept. Like today, he had one of his passes intercepted, but at least he has the guts to make some challenging passes, and when they work nice. I mean, so anyway, that's my take on that. I mean, people could see for what it is. I still, actually, I want to make one quick point about Achua.
Sure.
And I'd want to move on to the final point. You remember how we had that bit of a debate there about the center? We still kind of about the aggressive, the Claxons and
You were specific on Brooke Lopez, yes.
well, even before Brooke Lopez game, I had that thing. Lopez is not as aggressive as some of the others, though. But I mean, not everybody's.
So do you think Precious solves a lot of the issues that you had with the lack of?
That's the point. That's the point I wanted to
Great.
bring. When Precious, now it took time for him to get back into his game form, right? I mean, the conditioning, game conditioning. By the way, Scotty was doing an admirable job of. It's like a sinking ship, and there's a lot of water coming in from the holes, and I felt that Scotty was coming in and taking care of some of the holes. He was kind of because they were absolutely getting dominated in that area of the rebounds near the rim, obviously, and finishes at the rim. Zubac there had that nuts game on us, and I just felt that when Scotty was put in there, he was kind of like at least having resistance there that I didn't see before. Because I do commend Scotty and I saw Scotty battling for some rebounds. I mean, like that kind of like heart of battling for rebounds. I hadn't seen that before from some of the other players prior to Scotty moving in to do that. Now Precious coming back once again. I have every confidence that Precious battles, and it's not necessarily he might not be as tall as a Lopez, but Precious somehow has a physical strength to him. So I don't think Steven Adams is going to muscle. I mean, Steven Adams is a very powerful man, but like a Claxton is not going to baby around Precious. Precious, for his size, he seems to have a lot of strength, and that's why I think he's going to be successful with the rebounds. Like I think he took. We still talk about the Miami game. He had 20 rebounds or something. Remember that crazy game against Miami there? He really took them to town.
I mean, honestly, I like looking. I like looking at in terms of also chat. I just want to address this one thing. There's this person Sadra who's honestly, I don't mean to be rude, but very annoying. In the comments on the trade talk was very annoying. Thinks they know fucking everything. Here's a picture of Luka Doncic standing next to Kristaps Porzingis. You want to tell me he's 6'8"? Now shut the fuck up. Seriously, stop talking like you know everything. You don't, okay? Have you met Luka Doncic? He is 6'6". He's listed as 6'7" in shoes. He is not 6'8" or 6'9" or whatever the fuck you want to talk about. He just looks big because he's very heavy. He's about 235. Now stop it, man. Shut up. All right, moving on.
So I agree with you about Precious because, like I said, now there's a bit more of a challenge. It's not going to be a cakewalk with the Raptors at the rim there. I'm looking forward to the next game with the Grizzlies, with the Nets, with the Clippers. I'm looking forward to the next game having Precious and then Scotty, maybe intermingling in there and being a bit more challenging to their aggressive bigs. And once again, that I do stress that it's aggressive, talented bigs that seem to do that to us. That I feel. I mean, it's not every big. It's not every style of big that does it. It's certain types that seem to have our number that way or had. I mean, like I said, I think that changes now. Lastly, as far as the team trying to win, I'm actually relieved that that Boston was able to pull this off. I think the team already turned that page and has to get into a lottery position, better lottery position, winning these games, trying to, there's no chance we're going to get the 6th seed because I made that argument a month ago with you. Maybe there's a chance they can either go 6th seed or
that's done.
Lottery.
That game's over. We're 7 games. I think we're 7 under, right? We're 7 under now.
I don't understand why the front office has to make. Fred for sure has to go. Siakam, you already know the trade I wanted to do with Siakam. I'm still a strong believer that we focus on getting good returns in terms of the draft for this year and a little bit next year, plus whatever young talent we can bring in. We don't have to necessarily get rid of Gary Trent Jr. if he's able to re-sign with reasonable money. I mean, I got nothing against Gary Trent. When it comes to free throws, when it comes to all kinds of shooting, I have actually a lot more confidence when I see him trying to make shots, even if it's contested shots. Other Raptor players, like you already know, I already made my comment. I didn't, although Scotty's shooting was much better today, but for the most part, I don't have that confidence with too many Raptor players taking shots if it's not, within the range of the, in the paint or closer to the rim and things like that. But with Gary, is such a natural scorer, from all kinds of angles and stuff.
It was really different. It was like something I'd never been around.
I just wouldn't want to give that up, but I just, I don't know what the reports are, if he wants to stay or if he's going to go, what's the money to keep him. So anyway, I don't like the fact that they're having these close games and they could win a few and accidentally get themselves into a play-in position, which is a go-nowhere situation. They're not going to have a lottery pick, and they're not going to do anything in the playoffs, which is the dead man zone, right? So that's my scare. I want them to get rid of some of the like the Pascal and Fred, and for sure have a good solid lottery position. Stop messing around. You turn the page. You can't turn this season around. Leave it be, and let's start fresh with the good opportunities coming forward.
Awesome.
So my trade is still on the table, and if somebody didn't see that, I also had that trade for Orlando, which followed up on that trade that I did with you with the Pelicans. So I had the two trades there to clean house. And that's still a go for me to beef up on the 2023 lottery draft, a little bit of 2024, sacrifice 25, 26, 27. I know there's a rule where you can't do back-to-back in terms of first round picks.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Marco. I appreciate your sentiment around. I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, you only got a time thing, and like I said, those are the main things.
Appreciate it,
and I hope like a thing that front office makes a move now before these guys put us accidentally into.
I think a lot of people will unfortunately wait a couple of weeks for the trade deadline. There tends to be a lot of talk around this point, but for whatever reason, maybe management around the league is a bit of a procrastinator. It's sometimes talks in the last week. People want to make sure they want to talk about it right now, but they want to, negotiate right down to the wire. And then you'll see, people, they're almost like standing there playing the game chicken, if you're familiar with the game chicken. So so I mean, they're sort of just playing chicken with the trade deadline right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see a move earlier than that. I wouldn't be surprised to see guys getting rested, but yeah, like the more you lose with these guys in the lineup, I think the more you kind of lose your negotiating power on those trades. So anyway, thanks a lot, Marco. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, take care of yourself.
Cheers. All right, so we're at 1 hour and 16 minutes. It doesn't seem people really want to call in. I'm gonna leave the call in link here in case somebody else does want to call in. But actually, go to the description. There's a call in link there, but I'm gonna post it again as well. I do want to address a couple of points, and then I'd like to, if there are no more call-ins, then I would like to address two specific points that I have. One of them is a little bit, I want to say a little bit controversial, but this is not a channel that likes to duck controversy. It's something that's been on my mind for a very long time. I think it relates to a little bit of what's happening with Scotty, and it pertains to an interview that Dujounte Murray did with All the Smoke that I think touches on some very, very important things. So to the specific point of what I think is wrong with the Raptors offense, I spent a lot of time over the last week looking at other teams' offenses. And one of the things that I'm noticing is I can't think of another team that's not a lottery team that plays five guys who are just trying to score all the time with the ball. Off-ball movement, gravity, sequencing, timing is so pitiful for this team that it makes it almost impossible to watch this team. We do have Con on the line here. Just hang tight for 1 minute. Let me just finish this point and then we'll get to you. So what I think really needs to be done here is, Thaddeus Young, Otto Porter, Kem Birch. Those were the guys that I was looking at. Juancho Hernan-Gomez. These were the guys that you could, Christian Coloco, not to just only say Jeff Doubt. These are guys. Joe Weiskamp. These are guys who do a lot of stuff off the ball that helps the person with the ball to score. I think that's important. Tamberlin brought up the interesting point. I believe it was Tamberlin who brought up the point, if it wasn't Coach Mo, I think they both touched on it, that a lot of guys just sort of stand around and watch, right? I can flash to some examples of just really poor offense for the Raptors. You just see it too often. The lane is always congested. You've got guys sort of just dribbling sort of aimlessly. There's just not a lot of connection or coherence to the offense. And I think that sort of is amplified by the fact that guys are chasing contracts or whatever you want to call it. Wait, who tore their ACL? Tamberlin? Yeah, okay, sorry. We do have 2 callers, so I don't want to ramble on too long. We have, oh no. Oh boy. Okay. I think we're going to get a spammer on here. Okay. All right. Con, what's up?
Hi, Rob. How you doing tonight?
Not too bad. What's up?
Yeah, I just joined on Thursday. I was part of the crew that was up till 1:18 in Alberta listening to the great conversation.
Oh, I appreciate it. I remember your comment. Yes.
Yeah, so I just have a couple questions for you. First of all, with all these trades and everything, is it not possible to keep Pascal, Precious, OG, and Scotty and build around those guys, change the bench around, and then the rebuild doesn't have to be 2-3 years? Everyone seems to want to get rid of Pascal very quickly, but you know what? A rebuild does not have to take 4 years if Masai does this very properly.
I agree with you. When we did the trade show, which seemed to trigger Sadra a lot because I was routinely fleecing people from this community, unfortunately, that trade show, I think I probably have a certain expectation of how much Fred is actually worth around the league. I think that's accurate, but I may be, I'm definitely in the minority. Doug Smith seems to think that he's worth a couple of picks, even as an expiring contract who can walk in free agency. I don't see it. And if he just decides right now that he's going to just firmly say, yeah, I'm interested in either Toronto or Orlando, like if I'm interested in that. I mean, I think everyone knows that Fred is going to go to the money. Whoever offers him the most money, he's been on the record saying it before, like he's going to go to the highest bidder. So it's not like a Kawhi situation where you're trading for a guy who obviously has one destination. If you decide to move off of Fred, the team trading for him is doing this with a long-term expectation that they're going to give him everything he wants in free agency. I think the market for him is limited, but if you can trade him for something close to somewhere between what I say he's worth and what Doug Smith says he's worth, then yes, you could get back pieces that fit much better into this around the core that you mentioned, right? Gary as well.
Yes,
even if I would argue that Gary sort of fits the vision. The Vision 6-9 stuff, I think, again, like I disagree with the commenter who said that Siakam's handle is worse than Scotty's. I definitely see limits in Scotty's handle right now. He's got to get better. Siakam's got to get better too. These guys have to get better if either one of them are going to play full-time point guard without Fred VanVleet. And if you're not going to play these guys a full-time point guard and they're both going to be point forwards, then that's great too. But then it's sort of awkward unless you have a really tall ball handler to add in. So I would like to see a center who can stretch, who stretches the floor, does all those small intangible things, kind of like an Al Horford. If there's another Al Horford out there, that would be great for this team, or a Brook Lopez, guys like that, guys who defend at the rim, can be competent, smart defenders. It doesn't have to be a big bouncy athlete. It doesn't have to be a super hypey prospect. I would like to see movement shooters like a Joe Weiskamp, like a Landry Shamet, guys like that. They're not hypey. Again, people get too excited about offense, numbers, big performances. What you need, yeah, I think someone said Onyeka Okongwu, maybe not because of the shooting and the spacing. When people talk about people like Jakob Poeltl, I think, Jakob Poeltl could open up with his screen assists and his scoring gravity towards the basket, but that's exactly the same space on the court that Thaddeus Young and Precious Achiuwa and Scotty Barnes and all these guys. So I just think that the pieces don't fit very well right now, but there is talent. So swapping pieces for pieces that make sense, which is exactly the sentiment that you're expressing, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have just one other comment, and I'll just listen to you and hang up. But I was just, when you have Fred and Gary on the court all the time,
Mm-hmm.
then you're forcing Pascal and Scotty. They're going against these big, heavy, strong guys for 40, 43 minutes a game. And
Mm-hmm.
you wonder why these guys are gassed in the last 5 minutes. I mean, it's plain as day. I mean, the eye test doesn't lie. I mean, they're battling with guys that are 20, 30 pounds heavier and 3 and 4 inches taller. And then everyone wants to rag on these guys because they don't have it the last 3, 4, 5 minutes of the game. They've just been battling for 43 minutes.
What do really smart teams do when the other team goes way bigger?
They bring in their bigs.
Not always.
Well,
they spread them out. They spread them out.
And run them.
Right. So, but the Raptors don't do that. The Raptors they sprint in transition, and the Raptors regularly don't do that. I'm saying that The Art of War, which is one of my favorite books, says that if they are big, then you are small, and if they are small, then you are big. There is always a competitive advantage to exploit. Unfortunately, the Raptors don't exploit matchups really well. Sometimes you'll have Scotty Barnes or OG Anunoby with a 6'0" guard in the post, and the obvious pass is to just pass the ball to them and force the defense to collapse. You don't
never
make
get
it.
it.
The clear advantages in transition, because when you have switchable long lineups, the advantage is both in your favor on offense and defense to play fast. It is always going to be that way. You have multiple playmakers. When you are playing lineups with Scotty, Pascal, and Fred, you probably have more playmaking talent than most teams on a given night with those three guys. There aren't a lot of teams where the small ball center plus the power forward plus the point guard can all initiate the offense. That means that they can also initiate in transition. Each one of them can throw competent-ish passes, even if I think Scotty is probably the most gifted passer among the group. They're all competent playmakers. They all have playmaker ratings, passer ratings in terms of analytics above A-. That is an advantage to exploit, especially double so when you're playing the 4-point lineup, when you have a guy like Banton or Doughton or Malachi on the court with them. You could be like such an incredible transition team, but there has to be willingness to run. There has to be a buy-in to that. Sometimes Scotty is one of the guys who Scotty and OG, I really like what they do off the ball. I think Christian Koloko does well off the ball as well for a guy who newly picked up the game. And he will often flash to open positions on the court, and it's hit or miss whether he's going to get the lob pass or, granted, his finishing around the rim has been pretty poor, but I think the passing on this team has generally been porous as well. So, there's so many role players on other teams, guys like Grant Williams, guys like Peyton Pritchard, guys like Luke Cornett, everyone's hyping these guys up tonight. Guys like this require the offensive engines to be competent offensive engines, to be good decision makers, to be unselfish. And too often, I have found that is not the case for this team. So I think whatever pieces you get back, ultimately, it's still going to be hard for those pieces to thrive in an offense where your decision makers are not making good decisions. Yes, if you remove Fred and possibly Gary from this equation, maybe Boucher as well. Boucher, that guy, him too. You take those three guys out, you replace them with three guys who are doing more of the small stuff, the Kyle Lowry stuff, the little stuff. I think that you would immediately be better. Even if you would be less quote-unquote talented, it's the exact same thing as replacing Rudy Gay with guys like Patrick Patterson and Gravis Vasquez. Just sometimes too much of a good thing is a bad thing, and I think the Raptors have too much isolation scoring right now, and it's really killing their offense. It's a lot of ball holding. Yeah.
And I have one last 10-second thing. I'm in Alberta, so I read the Star and I read Doug Smith, and I just read his article just a couple of days ago, and he's talking about the grumblings of all these veterans that want out of Canada, like being in Toronto or the area that you guys are. Do you guys hear anything like that?
Sorry, I just had to fight off I almost threw up. and I didn't
Oh,
want to throw up on a live. So, but when you said you read the Star and Doug Smith, I almost threw up. So can you just repeat your question again?
yeah,
I
I was
lost my
just
train of thought there.
yeah. I mean, I read the article the other day that he wrote in his paper, and obviously I'm in Alberta, so I don't know a lot of what's going on out east. But he writes that there's grumblings in the locker room of veterans on the Raptors that want out of Canada, and that doesn't make sense to me. Like, does he know something that we don't?
Okay, no, he does not. You know, every single time I see a video which said Raptors insider leaks, blah, 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 I'm just like, oh, great. Like, they got something from someone who knows something. And then they'd be like, Raptors insider, Doug Smith. And I was like, bro, inside what? Inside the arena? Congratulations. There's 20,000 people there. Ask one of them. They probably know more. Okay. This guy is honestly a clown. Okay, he is
Oh,
a
for
clown.
sure.
He has been a clown for 20 years. I don't know how he still has his job, but this narrative of, oh, African American athletes really hate Canada needs to end. No, what they hate is you and people like you, Doug Smith. These and you know what? Thank you for bringing up Doug Smith, because that is going to lead very well into the Dejounte Murray portion of this at the back end of this talk. But this is the first time you ever called in?
First time ever.
I really appreciate it, man. I love hearing from first time callers.
Yeah.
Thank you for supporting this channel. I
Thank
really
you for
appreciate you.
keeping Alberta informed. Thank you.
My pleasure. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
All right. All right, chat. I have a feeling. Can someone remind me what was the name of that person who just kept like spamming the chat last time? Do you remember? I don't want to. Okay. We're gonna try something very wild here. And we're gonna bring on Jason Liu. And Jason Liu, I apologize if this is a case of mistaken identity, but if I recall correctly, the person who spammed the chat like hell yesterday was named Jason Liu. And if that was you, you better behave, man. Jason Liu, what's up? Jason? Hello? Hello? All right. Chris, what's up? Hello, is this Chris?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted there. How you doing, Robert?
I'm good.
All right. Enjoy another loss?
It's all right.
Spent earlier afternoon watching a couple college prospects, so it was pretty good. I got to see Brandon Miller again.
Mm-hmm.
At least the first half looks like he had a really good game. I really like what he can do at that size. I think he'd really fit well on this team. And
okay. Okay. You like him a lot. What do you think of Baba?
so I haven't seen him play yet. I haven't watched the game yet. I caught like a bit of his first game, but I didn't really take anything from that because it's his first game. So I've been paying attention. How's he played since he's been back?
I haven't been watching him. I'm gonna do a deep dive into him really soon. I have a feeling that we like FSU prospects. I almost said projects. He's not a project. He's pretty refined. I like his pedigree, like just having the international experience, coming over to FSU. I think FSU is like a really good training ground for how we like to play. They switch 1 through 5. They play deep rotations. We don't play deep rotations, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
A lot of long switchable defenders. I think it's just seeing Scotty's adjustment from Leonard Hamilton's system to to Nick Nurse's system, provided Nick Nurse is here next year. I just think that it's an interesting program to watch. You often see like every team that Michael Jordan runs, there's a blue blood bias, right? Tends to be, right? There's North Carolina, Duke, etc. So I think that, like maybe the Raptors monitor FSU a little bit more closely. So I always watch FSU prospects. I keep saying projects. Guys like Terrence Mann, even ex-FSU prospects. Like when I look at the Bulls and then we talk about like maybe trading Fred VanVleet to the Bulls, I'm like, I think they might want Patrick Williams back.
Yeah.
So yeah. Who else do you like apart from Brandon Miller?
I like Jet Howard. What's his name? Son. So there's pedigree there,
Mm-hmm.
as well as there's the freshman at Ohio State. I can't really pronounce his last name, so I don't want
Okay.
to butcher it. So those are the really the three guys I like in the lottery, and they all pretty much bring shooting. And I feel like that's something we really need to add to this roster. Enough of this trying to teach everybody to shoot. Let's just get some shooters in here.
It seems like I mean, this seems to be a model that they've gone after, but I don't think they're actively like wanting to draft bad shooters. I
No,
think
I agree
more or less they're looking at
with everything
non-shooters
else.
as like undervalued in the draft process. So they see it as, okay, well, if a guy of Scotty's build, pedigree,
Uh,
playmaking could have shot, he would have gone number one,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So you almost look at it as like a market inefficiency where teams are overvaluing shooting, so we're going to undervalue shooting. I don't think this season is because players on this team can't shoot. I think it's because players on this team aren't playing the right way. So that's kind of where I'm at with
Like,
this
I
team.
like that. I like that thought process when we're not in the lottery, for instance. Like when we're picking in the 20s in the second
Hmm.
round, I find that's actually a great process, thought process to go about. But I feel like when you're in like top 10, you just get the most talented players, and we all know the game's about shooting now. So
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, Brandon Miller, 6'9", fits exactly what you need. 3-point shooting is usually the first thing that they bring up with him. Um, I worry about like what? So let me see here. He shot 28% on two attempts
yeah,
at the Nike EYBL. Um, Settles for a lot of outside shots. Like,
and I feel like
uh,
even Gary's that type of player as well too. And I feel like he made some
how do you
strides.
how do you feel about his playmaking? Because I mean, like some people have comped him to tall playmakers. I think he had, if I recall correctly, a negative assist to turnover ratio. Like, how do you feel about his playmaking? Because I think that playmaking potential is what decidedly puts him below Scoot for me.
Oh, he's definitely below Scoot. He's not even. It goes Wemby and then Scoop and then it's the rest. And then it's everybody else to me.
Right. But I mean, it's funny that Jayson Tatum's draft was a lot like that too.
Mhm.
It was Lonzo, Markel, and then everyone else for some people. And like I disagree obviously with that thought process. I'm curious. So the college season is long. March is still months away.
Sure.
Guys rise, guys fall, right? I mean, it's totally not uncommon for a guy to be mocked third, fourth right now and end up being drafted 25th,
That's
28th, or in the second round.
still like well,
The one example that I remember most familiarly about that rings true, and I don't remember if you remember this too, was the Pascal draft with Scal Labissiere.
oh my God. I wanted
Yeah, you remember that? I mean, he
I
started that
remember watching
first month, right? That first month, he was at Kansas, right?
mhm.
I think
No. It counts. No, he was at Kentucky,
he was
I
at
think.
Kentucky. My bad.
Yeah.
So that first month in Kentucky, I believe he averaged 12 points, 4 rebounds, and he was picking
I
up a
think
lot of fouls. He ended up the season like losing his spot to a three-star recruit. And he was one of the top two or top one recruited players in the country. I mean, Rivals had him. I think Rivals had him above Ben
number
Simmons.
yeah, he was number 2 that year. Yeah.
So that's just crazy. I mean, it can happen fast. So, where a guy is right now, so what I like to do is I like to let the college, because time is limited, right? So
Mhm.
watching this shit live, it can be interesting, obviously, to sort of track it and follow it. But with everything I'm trying to do with the Raptors right now, I think what I want to do is I want to wait until like April. And then I want to deep dive the hell out of like what is the analytics profile of these players, which of these players project up. But I agree with your thought process that if you're picking top 5 this year, you don't want to draft a non-shooter into this lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah. One more thing before I go,
Hmm.
about necessarily about Fred's, because I really been to me it seems so obvious that he's on his way out now. But like
Is
so
it
I'll just
because he wore all black? It's just like I was like, is he at a funeral? I mean, I don't know. I wear black all the time. I'm not criticizing the guy
be
for
like
wearing all black, but it was just like it was so aggressively all black.
So I wasn't on social media at all today. So like when I saw
Good for you.
when I when I saw the starting lineup and he wasn't in it, I was a little excited. I'm like, did a trade happen? I'm like, did I miss something?
He was so happy at the start of the game too. He was all smiles and laughs, and I
You
was
know,
like, man, did he get his trade? Like that would be great. That'd be great. I hope he got his trade.
because I follow one of his like I think it's his photographer, and then like
Okay.
I don't know, like he posted like some picture
Hmm.
when after the Minnesota game, and then it was like something like, "Oh, Fred, you're my brother for life." I'm like, "What's going on?" I'm like,
Who posted that?
his photographer. I forget what his name is on
Yo,
Instagram, but
everyone was losing their mind over some Instagram post, or is it a Twitter post or something that Fred posted and then it got deleted. Did you end up seeing what it was?
I'm
Was
not
it just a picture of him and Gary? Everyone's like, "Oh my God, he's
okay.
traded."
See that, but like
It was
I thought
Gary's
it was
birthday.
his birthday. Yeah, I just figured because it's Gary's birthday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
we
Whatever. I mean,
we
he's gonna break his own trade. You
uh,
know it. Like he's gonna break his own trades. You just follow him on Twitter and just wait for the three dice emoji. Wait for on to the next one for him to quote Jay-Z incorrectly or something like that. Just wait for it because it's gonna happen. I have a feeling he should get traded. I've been told that he's less likely to get traded. According to Doug Smith, of course, his biggest fanboy, there seems to be some belief that his value around the league is as high as OG fucking Anunoby. I
I just
disagree the
that
hell with that.
I agree with that
His
as well.
first of all, like market value is determined by market, like by the war that could be
Everybody has a
created in the
price.
case. It's like how many teams need this guy? Four? You're telling me that a guy who is needed by four teams is older is going to be as valuable as? It's like, bro. Like sometimes I want to. Here's the thing. If I had the money to do this, I would do a deep dive into wire transfers between Fred and Doug Smith. I just want to know. I just want to know. I mean, like the way that this guy covers him, it's so beyond reality. Like, I mean, I've talked to scouts that are like, you'd be lucky, given his contract situation, to get a pick and a decent prospect out of it. He's saying multiple picks for Fred VanVleet. You are setting the bar very high there. And I mean, with the number of teams that actually could use him, like I'm not throwing shade at the guy. It's just he's had the
Oh,
season from hell,
for
you
sure.
know? So
For me, the only like two teams that seem that are like would actually like be realistically interested to him that have been rumored and linked to him are like Orlando and Phoenix.
right. I mean, like some people have said New Orleans, although I mean, to me, that's an awkward fit. I could see Chicago as a homecoming, give him a boost. Lonzo's out. I could see
Because
that,
I'm
you
think
know.
I'm thinking teams that will actually pay him, and I think those two teams will pay him this summer.
Well, if Chicago can clear some salary, I mean, Nikola Vucevic, I believe, is off the books. They
But
could just slide that money over to him. They could look
like,
to trade somebody. Maybe they look to move Zach LaVine. I think, a homecoming for Fred in Chicago would be like the best of all worlds because I know the Raptors like to send
yeah,
guys that are valuable to their organization into good situations. And I think you're
they like
sending
to
him to
go
a huge
strong.
market. Pardon?
Yeah, they always like to do that. They always like to do their
I
players.
appreciate that about them. I,
I-
I like that they do that. I mean,
Yeah,
part of me is like, I don't really give a shit where this guy. I'd send him to Tokyo right now, but, um, yeah. I mean, like, I think it's a cool thing. Anyways, you got any final points?
yeah. So those two teams. So there's a lot of players. I'm guessing. I'm thinking that if he did get traded to those two teams, a couple players that would come back. For instance, like I'm just thinking of value of what they could get back from those two teams. I'm thinking like it'd have to be something. It'd have to be something like Jonathan Isaac, and then like one of the guards that they don't want anymore. Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I presented Suggs in my trade show. I mean,
He,
as a rehabilitation a prospect. I mean, I don't like Jalen Suggs. If we did a redraft 2021, I'm probably picking him like 18th, 16th, 15th. Like he's not. I'm never gonna like be like, yay, Jalen Suggs. But I'm realistic. This guy's on an expiring contract. And one thing I will say is to anyone thinking he might pick up his team option, you're crazy. He's not going to pick up that team option. He's definitely not going to pick it up. With his injury history right now, and him trending closer and closer to 30, you do not. If you're his agent and you advise him to pick up that team contract and bet on himself or whatever that bullshit, you're crazy because like it could fall off any minute. And I'm telling you, this guy is like one half a step right now away from probably like G League. It's close or end of rotation type of role for a team. So like
yeah,
I would cash in right now if Orlando Weltman wants to pay him because they see him as a steadying force for their locker room. Or I mean, I don't understand how the fuck they could, given, what he's done for our young guys. But if they see him as that for whatever reason, I mean, power to them.
That's why I feel there's a real connection there because of the whole Waltman connection with Toronto and everything. And so, like, so that's why I feel like Orlando's I feel like that's a real possibility. But I guess we'll see. And then, like,
but I mean, if you're Orlando, like, let me sell it to me. Why are you giving up assets for a guy that you can just sign outright, especially if there are rumblings that the Raptors won't pay him what he wants, right? I mean, the problem of holding on to him is you can't let him go for nothing. You've let go of pretty much your entire championship core, with the exception, basically right now, the entire championship core minus Pascal Siakam has walked out the door for the exact equivalent of Precious Achiuwa. That is all you've gotten back for all those guys combined. That cannot happen again. I don't give a shit. And especially in a season where you're not competitive, because it would be very different right now if the Raptors were 6-7 games over 500. You can't, and you couldn't agree, or you couldn't get a commitment or whatever. You're worried he's going to ask for 130 versus 114. Okay. Like, I get it. You can't trade the guy because you do have to. It's very hard in this city, unfortunately, to sell that you're pulling the plug on a winning season. I think most fans at this point would agree that this is not going to be a winning season. They're 7 games under 500. They're on their way to, I think, 8 straight on the road after tomorrow night.
Oh yeah,
or 7 straight. It's a wrap. Like, this is over. Like, at this point, every win is just one win away from, I'm just thinking forward. If the Raptors end up with a bottom 4 record, you're gonna really kick yourself if the gap between you and the next team was like 1 win, and it's a win you picked up some idiotically in January.
I just think you have to make a trade at this point. Like,
you do, and that's the problem. Every other team knows that too. So the Raptors do have to feign some level of competitiveness. They can't just shut down all their guys and then offer these guys on a fire sale, because ultimately, like, the difference between negotiating from a position of strength and weakness might be an extra draft pick, and these assets are going to be very important for the Raptors. For a team that drafts so well, I want to see this team for the first time ever have a treasure chest of draft picks, because the next time a star comes up, I would like to be able to throw 6-7 draft picks at them without depleting our entire chest. And I look at teams like New Orleans, I look at teams like OKC, New Orleans, and I just look at them and I'm just like, yeah, okay, that's overkill. Like having 8, 9 picks in the next year. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you have a farm team or something? That's going to probably be hard. But what a great problem to have. Like, with OKC, again, it's probably aggressively overkill. But for New Orleans, I mean, what a great opportunity they have this year. They're atop the West, and they're in the Wemby sweepstakes at the same time. Like, that's an enviable position. Anyway, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on. Were you a first-time caller, or you've called before?
No, I've been on here before.
You've been on before. Okay, thanks for calling in again, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Lastly, before I go, it's just like, because you mentioned the whole FSU pipeline and everything. Jonathan Isaac is from that pipeline as well.
But he hasn't played in 2 years. 3 years almost.
Hypothetically, how do you think a healthy Jonathan Isaac would look on this team?
Great. I love him.
That's all. That's it, pretty much.
What do you think?
I think he'd fit very well too. If we got like Jonathan Isaac right before he got hurt, like that player would be great on this team.
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah. All right.
A lot better and everything. So yeah,
I agree.
That's it.
Thanks a lot, man. Cheers.
No problem. Have a good one.
Cheers. Okay. Next up, we've got McClayton. Is it McClayton or McClayton? It's McClayton, obviously. Hello, McClayton. What's up?
This is an automated message. Do not interrupt because...
All right. Nice. Love it. Got spammed. Don't care. All right. Next up, we have Blackhawk 2K. Blackhawk 2K, what's up? I want to ask I want to give you a chance to talk about the game, but I actually do have a Dejounte Murray clip from All the Smoke about his time in San Antonio. Do you know anything about it?
I'm hearing rumblings of it, but I haven't actually watched it. I didn't even want to watch. I got bad. Let's say I'm not a Dejounte Murray. I know he's talented, but I'm not really a Dejounte Murray guy.
Okay.
Per se. He is talented. He is talented. I'll give him that.
Okay, so I towards the end of our segment, I would like to play that clip.
Oh yeah, perfect.
But if you don't want to react to it or whatever, I wouldn't mind your
Well,
reaction.
after hearing the clip, I will definitely react to it. But I
Cool.
haven't
Okay.
actually seen it. I know
Yeah,
he was on all the smoke, but I
I'm
haven't
gonna
watched it.
play a bit of it for you after. But anyways, what are your thoughts on the game? Can we quickly get to it? We've covered a
I
lot
still,
in
I
this
still,
game, but yeah.
yeah, I still like the game, even though we lost. I still like the game. I still believe Nick Nurse still needs to own this one because you gave us a taste of Joe Weiskamp, and here we are. We needed some shooting tonight. And where's Joe Weiskamp? We know Downton is at Wisconsin playing. I'm watching that game right now.
How's he doing?
Oh, they're in the lead. It's starting to dwindle down, but they had a 20-point lead, but they're starting to dwindle down.
What'd you think of that David Johnson 3-pointer to win the game the other day?
Oh,
905.
excellent.
Did you watch it?
Actually, I'm starting to think that he's getting stronger because even in this game, David Johnson is just lightening it up from 3. So I give this kid credit for sticking with the 905 ever since being let go from the Raptors. I give him and Reggie Perry.
Do you think he has a chance to catch on with the Raptors as an end-of-bench guy again? Are you seeing potential defensively?
I think somebody else will scoop him up. I think somebody else will scoop them up if they can get better at their skill set. Because where they're standing, they're vulnerable to being picked up.
It's crazy. I like Justin Champagnie. I like David Johnson. I like Jalen Harris. I mean, I don't like all of them on the same team, but I like one of them at least. Right. I'm liking Joe Weiskamp. I'm liking Jeff Doughton. I just have an affinity for these end-of-bench guys that the Raptors are picking up because I see all of them as really good end-of-bench guys. Problem is, you can't have 6 of them. They have an overabundance. And it's sort of funny because, it's the Raptors have too much of everything and not enough of something, right? They have too many second options, in my opinion. Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr. all could be serviceable-ish second options to a dominant star player like a Luka Doncic, right? I mean, do you really see a gap between the guys I just mentioned and a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie or Tim Hardaway Jr. or someone like that who's played second option to Luka, right? I mean, yeah, okay.
OG is totally different than those guys. I think okay, I can put Dinwiddie and Pascal and Gary in the same box. I can do that, but I would say OG is a different beast.
What about Fred? Like, if you put Fred in place of Dinwiddie, you think Dinwiddie's better?
Oh yeah. I mean,
I think he's better too, but I mean, like,
Fred is limited by his height, and which I don't like to use as an excuse, but I believe he's limited by his height because there's certain situations his height has been against him when he goes into that paint and he doesn't know that there's 3 big shot blockers right behind him. He loses that one each and every time.
Okay. Yeah. No, I agree.
And Fred, if you're listening, I'm not saying it to be mean.
Yeah,
I got to put that out there.
What'd you think of the final? First of all, like, one of the things that Nick Nurse calling that timeout with, I think it was 14 seconds left in transition.
He didn't call it. Actually, it's the referees automatically.
No, not that one. Not that one. I'm not talking about the replay one. I'm talking about when the Raptors grabbed the ball
one before that.
And they were in transition, right?
Yeah.
And Grant Williams is down, which if you're a coach, you should know that. This guy is writhing on the ground and he is not getting up and he's not about to get up. You have a 4-on-5 advantage with a guy on the floor.
You take the advantage. There's no we can't be doing any charity plays on the court.
I don't even think it was a charity thing. I think it was just him needing to be sure to set up a play. But I think given your propensity to not be able to score against, number one, against their half-court defense is good enough to stop your half-court offense, number one. Number two, if the game is not obvious, you're scoring a lot in transition because you have these big, long guys, and they're playing guys like Blake Griffin and Luke Cornett and Pritchard, who can't really keep up with you in transition, quite frankly. So, what do you think of this comment here? Thank you, Rank Scrub, for the super chat here. Is Trae Young a number 1 shooting point guard star potential? I don't know exactly what that means, but I guess Rank Scrub, based on your past comments, do you think? I guess we were asking Blackhawk 2K. Do you think the Raptors should target Trae Young in a trade? No,
Trae does not defend. No, No,
agree
I'm
with that.
sorry. We need to see some defense on this team from our players. Not no, regardless of how good of an offensive player you are, we need to see that.
I agree. I think Trey just adds like a way, way, way better version of what you already have with, all your offensive players. Ball
Yeah.
dominant, doesn't do anything off the ball, really poor when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. And I think it's like what I've been harping on so far in this chat so far for the last hour and 50 minutes. Tamberlin just says no with like 100 O's because she hates Trey Young. And the problem is that, like, I think you have all these guys without the ball, they're pretty useless, right? Scotty cuts into space pretty well. I think Thad is really good without the ball at times. He'll flash into the post and he'll quickly clear out, go to the corner. When you watch the guys without the ball, do you see, like, if you were coaching the Raptors, what would you do with the pieces you already have to make this offense work?
Ooh, good question. I think we spoke a little bit of it earlier today. You spoke with one of the guests them already. Like Ken Bird should be in there as on the starter as opposed to having all of your power on the starting lineup. Spread it out a bit. I mean, as I said, the answers have always been here. It's just that they're not being utilized in the correct way. Just like when we had, like even today, we were up, and then again, wrong rotation, and we start to go down. Then there's also the aspect of these guys have to be a foot closer on their ability to block the shot or alter the shot for the 3-point line. Because they let Pritchard go. They were there. Pascal was there. Scotty was there, but they back off. And I even said this to you before in a previous call where I called out even Kem for it. They back away too much. They give too much space. So they need to figure out how to stay closer to a person without creating a foul.
Right.
But this team has too much. They give too much space to say, okay, well, I dare you. Well, you're in a position right now where you've been losing games one too many times. You don't have the luxury to be given space to the opponents. You need to solve that problem. That's the way I look at it.
Evan Mobley just had a career high tonight. Crazy game. Just want to flash that onto the screen for everybody else.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but you know what? It's about time. It's good. It's all good.
38
it's going to happen to everyone.
38 points with Donovan Mitchell out. Insane. To 19 for 27 shooting. Didn't make a single three. It's nuts.
Right.
Kauto from Mars.
Who was that against again tonight? Was that against the
Milwaukee?
Milwaukee.
Yeah, Kauto from Mars, Kuato from Mars. Thank you so much for the super chat, man. I really appreciate it. I'll be honest, like these live streams, they do not bring in a ton of money, so I really do appreciate the super chat. Jason Liu says, "Put me back on. My mic was not working. I swear, I want to have a serious convo about Barnes." Well, Jason Liu, you're not in backstage anymore, so I don't know how to put you back on. But if you were the person who spammed the chat last night, man, yeah, I gotta be honest, go fuck yourself. Can we make a jump like New Orleans in the draft? Been repping the 6 for life.
I don't think we're gonna make. I don't think we're gonna be able to buy ourselves a spot up because, and I hate you're gonna laugh when it comes to because I'm rooting for the team to win games still. Or at least continue to play because I love watching this team. I love watching the team. I just love watching the team.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, but
wouldn't you love watching competitive losses as Scotty Barnes handles the ball and turns the ball over 5 times because his handle isn't tight enough right now? But on the occasion that he doesn't turn the ball over, he finds Joe Weiskamp open for 3 after 3, Precious Achua diving to the rim, pass. I mean, the fun of losing. But losing beautiful.
Scotty's always going to be there. I like the fact that you threw in Joe Weiskamp in there. I would like to see a better combination of players on the floor in that regard. So yes, the answer is yes to that, because there's no way you can say no to saying, well, I want to see more of Joe Weiskamp. I want to see Precious. Yeah, you want all these guys there, right? If okay, what I didn't like seeing tonight, I didn't like seeing Malachi on the floor tonight. For some reason, going bigger was working again. It's funny, these last two games, going bigger seems to resolve some of our problems more than staying smaller. And
Right.
we started to lose again. As soon as we started to go small,
Yeah.
we started to lose.
Summer Low says, what happens when Joe goes 0 for 5 next game? Summer Low, I got to tell you, I don't give a shit if he goes 0 for 10 next game. It's not about him making shots. It's about the shots that he actually takes, where he's taking them, how he moves without the ball, the shooting gravity. When he's on the court, trust me, he's on the scouting report. The team moves differently. He moves differently. He cuts through the paint. He always brings the defender with him. He's got gravity right now, and he's got IQ, knowing where to be. He states even if he's standing in the corner on the strong side, the defender has to move 3 feet closer to him because he can get that shot off so quick. Trust me, it's a really important thing to have guys like that who are not ball dominant. They pretty much shoot the shots that they're supposed to take within the offense. It is so missing.
And he's got size.
Yeah,
he's
I mean, like exactly, and I mean, like, he's got athleticism too, man. 42-inch burst. I think that's it's a really underrated pickup for the Raptors. I was sort of sleeping on it when they brought him on initially, but. So Ichez saying bring on Jason Liu. Well, Jason Liu has disappeared. I didn't censor him. I put him on. He couldn't figure out his mic. So that's not my issue. Blackhawk 2K, I do not want to ambush you with this. So I do want to give you a bit of a preamble of where I'm going with this, and you can tell me if you want to react to this, or you want to be a part of this conversation, or you don't want to be a part of this conversation. Trigger warning to anyone out there who is overly sensitive to issues of racism. One of the things that Dujounte Murray talked about was how the Spurs wanted to change him because he was from the hood. They felt like he was from the hood. They felt like he talked a certain way. And I feel like they did this with Steven Jackson. Okay. Because he was, right? I feel like they did this with Kawhi Leonard too. Right? I think that there's an issue, a larger issue, a social issue, with kids who come from inner cities going through the NCAA and college and through to the pros, because overwhelming majority of the media members in this country and that cover this league, that cover most sports, actually are white. I think the overwhelming majority of coaches are white. The overwhelming majority of owners are white. And there seems to be this idea that, whether it be just it's in the vernacular. It's in the use of the word thug. When Doug Smith calls Dwight Howard a thug, that has so many problematic connotations. I thought we were past this. And when someone told me that Doug Smith did that, I was like, did he do this 20 years ago? No, he did this last year. But we know we know Dwight Howard isn't a thug. Of course he's not. He's a nice, affable guy. I mean, you can say what you want about him, call him a coach killer, but the way that, and it's not a race thing. I want to be clear. It's not about race. It's about culture, because they're definitely not treating Tony Parker the same way they're treating Dujounte Murray. So I want to just bring this conversation up because I think this is very much impacting Scotty Barnes. I do. It's just my opinion that the way that he talks, where he's from West Palm Beach, he has a certain way of being that maybe does not rub the media the right way. They think he's a little bit goofy. They think he's, whatever they think about him.
Well, they think he's young. I don't know if it would be goofy, but I do think calling, if you look at him, he's young. He's no Iverson, right? I mean, that's flashy, right? But he's more, when you look at Pascal and Scotty, these are guys who you don't see. Well, Scotty turns it up in the game, but you don't see an angry side to them when they're out there. You see more of a humanistic side. When you look at these guys, I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but you're not seeing this type of like they're gonna come up to you and knock you upside the head or anything like that. There is a You like to point out that Scotty likes to hug. I like to
Yeah.
point out that Pascal likes to play joyously. He's not the type of person that can. Both of these guys don't play in negative headspace. They don't play with a dark spirit over them. I don't want to make your show sound weird, but they don't.
Can you think of an example of a player who plays with a dark spirit?
They are, but I can't. If I can remember if I can remember their name, but they're not top players. But
Did Ben Wallace play with a dark spirit? Did Rasheed Wallace play with a dark spirit?
No, I'm not going with them. I'm not going with them. I'm going like lower tier when I'm thinking about this.
I guess what I'm trying to say with this is that
Grayson Allen.
I mean, he's just dirty. He's just dirty.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a kind of dark spirit there. That's not these other two guys, right?
Someone said Dylan Brooks.
Let me see.
Someone's saying Cousins, Monte Morris.
Cousins can have a dark spirit because he's got a big frustration on him. There's a reason for his.
I've just kind of had a beef in general. Okay, so for those people who don't know, I grew up in Washington Heights. I grew up in Scarborough. I grew up in government housing. Most of the people around me talked a certain way, looked a certain way, and we all got, I want to say, whitewashed in school, right? Most of us got told, if you keep dressing that way, if you wear bandanas, if you wear your jeans down, no one's going to hire you. They try to overwrite you because they think that what you're doing is wrong or that the way you're living is wrong or whatever. I just feel like for a kid like Dejounte Murray, who, you know, I know a lot about him, like it doesn't really matter why I know so much about him, but to see a person who's just so genuinely devoted, and I'm going to play the clip right now just so I don't keep talking about him. I'm just going to let him sort of speak for himself a little bit here. But
to go home mad. I had my uncle living with me, and I used to go home mad, bro, just from not understanding. Like, where we come from, you won't understand what they're putting you through. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't understand nothing. Like they'll throw me in the fire, then they'll make me, they're like, I'll come to the arena, they're like, you're not dressing up today. I don't even got a sports jacket. They trying to give me a big ass sports jacket. Like, nah, you could wear Pau Gasol sports jacket then. Like, so for me, I'm like, there's a lot being thrown at me, bro. And I'm like, man, I don't like this, bro. Then I'm going home. I'm telling Unc, like, Unc's older. He's just enjoying it. Like, he having fun. You know, his nephew made it. And he out there with me. I'm going home like, man, I'm busting Tony's ass in practice. I'm busting Patty Mills' ass in practice. I'm locking them up. You get what I'm saying? I'm like, damn, like, look, give me 5 minutes. Give me 7 minutes. Like, then they send me to the G League. Then as time start going, bro, like, they bring in a point guard from Argentina that's close with Manu, playing in front of me. And I'm behind Tony, Patty, but they playing these mind games. They trying to see if they could break me, not knowing you can't break me.
They want you to break yourself.
They want you to break yourself. You get what I'm saying? And they doing that, though. I'm at home tripping. I'm punched holes. You know what I mean? I'm rah-rah with my uncle, just venting, you know? But a lot of just more they playing other guys that was second round picks, undrafted in front of me. Now I'm just like, bro, what's going on? I'm hitting rich. I'm like, bro, I gotta get traded. He like, nigga, you ain't got no value. You feel me? I'm like, man, bro, this is too much, bro. I'm like, what did they put me through, bro? I don't understand. I start hearing your name. Steve Jack went through a lot of BS. Obviously, we know you. I know you cold, so you ain't gotta tell me you cold. Come on, bro. And it's like a lot of people. Like I start building relationships. Like you know, my barber from there. We 7.
And he know everything I went through. Cause I used to go in that same shop.
You feel what I'm saying?
And vent to them.
And that's what I'm saying. So like, I start building relationships with people from there. Not a lot. Like he really don't.
The solid ones.
Like and he's solid. And brought him along with me today because he's solid. You feel what I'm saying? But like. Even him, like he brought up you. He like, man, Steve Jackson, you remind me of Steven Jackson. His uncle, all of them, they like, you remind me of Steve Jackson. Like he was going through the same, venting, mad, da. And now it's like, people don't realize, bro. I went through so much there. Like, I was there 6 years. You feel what I'm saying? Like,
it don't seem like he was there that long either.
It doesn't. But it's like, I feel like, really like, and they know I feel this way. I feel like they really like they drafted me, but they feel like the stuff that was going around the air of me coming from the hood and da-da-da-da, that I was going to make it in entourage 30 people.
Yeah.
Smoking, drinking, and articles about fighting, just ruining their reputation of what they stand for as a Spurs. You know, I think that's what they thought, but they never said that. You know what I mean? Just from the stuff I had to go through, like, and when they seen, like, he need a chance and this motherfucker be in the gym, like, they start having to kick me out the gym. Like, when they said you got access 24 hours every day, knowing I wasn't playing, so I'm like, lace them up, like, we to the gym. You know what I mean? That was just every day. And obviously, I started growing. First year go by, you know, thrown in the fire in the playoffs versus the Rockets. Then my second year, they see I come back, obviously getting stronger, getting better. And then that was the year I took the job from Tony. Pop about us in the office. You know what I mean? He told Tony. Tony ain't like it. I know he ain't like it.
No, he ain't like it.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
Like,
my
for me,
boy.
I love real. Like, keep it a buck with me.
Yeah.
Like, keep it 100, bro. I'ma love you for that. You know what I mean? And I know he didn't like it. You feel me? Because if he liked it, he would have mentored me the way he should have.
Right.
He wouldn't have went to Charlotte. He would have stayed right there. You feel what I'm saying? And that's me. You gonna get the real. Just how y'all, all the smoke, y'all, the real. You feel me?
Let's see.
So, it doesn't matter why or how I know as much as I do about Dujounte Murray, but I will tell you that this is a young man who comes from a great family, a person who was raised through a lot of struggle. And yeah, I'm not black. I don't know if you can tell from everything about me, but I'm not black. So sometimes I feel like this isn't really my space to speak, even though this is stuff that shit that breaks my heart. To see someone like him or someone like Kawhi get treated a different way for doing the exact same thing that somebody else might do, because there's an interpretation. Like when Phil Jackson calls Carmelo Anthony's or LeBron's people posse, those are not his posse. Mav Carter is not his posse. Rich Paul is not his posse. When you use the word posse, when you use the word thug, these are triggered words. They have racial connotation. They do go back 40, 50 years. This shit didn't happen that long ago. I mean, it's crazy to think about the trauma that people go through when they grow up poor. It's not about black or white. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying when you come up through some hard times, when you're coming up with scarcity, when you come up, parents who can't pay the bills, all these things, they create trauma triggers for you. I have trauma triggers, heavy trauma triggers from Nigel Wilson. Don't speak on this topic. It's not your place. I mean, honestly, I'm expressing my views as a human being. If you have an issue with it, I'm sorry.
I would say to that comment there, right there, we can't really believe that what the situation is 100% what we think it is right now, because I can come up with a different viewpoint for this.
Sure, please.
One thing you got to take into consideration: Dejounte Murray is not isolated as far as the Spurs is considered. You have DeMar DeRozan, who left the Spurs and came up with negative comment after he left the Spurs. He said Popovich didn't want him to shoot threes. Right?
Mhm.
That was DeMar throwing a shot out there to say, hey, y'all think Popovich is great, but look, he was tough on me for no good reason, and I'm DeMar DeRozan.
What about Kawhi putting the middle finger in his ring?
Okay, that's because Kawhi wanted to come home, but I'm not going to go with that one. I'm going to give you another one.
Mm-hmm.
This Primo, Canadian dude, right? This guy was given problems there, and they knew, but they didn't do anything until the person who decided to say she's going to sue because he's exposed. They say he's exposing himself, and it happened on multiple occasions. Here's what I know. If and this will go pertaining to Dejounte. He's saying that they have all these negative connotations of him. In the NBA, if a team thinks that you have a bad reputation and it's going to come back on you, they get rid of you immediately. He's saying that within the first year, they wanted to break him down, but they had a negative connotation of him. If they had that negative connotation, they would have gotten rid of him because he would have been a lot easier to get rid of then than he was now. They actually profited from getting rid of him by sending him to the Atlanta Hawks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. Someone saying Kawhi middle finger is not about race. Come on, I didn't say it was about race. I'm saying it was against the Spurs organization. He left sour. You know, DeMar left sour, right? Dujounte left sour, even though they said all the right things. Because look, if you are a player, these guys control so much. The team that drafts you, that has you, especially when you have a master puppeteer like Popovich, and you could say he's a great coach all you want. I don't know how you want to tackle who he is as a man. But when you have a guy who has that much swing and sway in the league, how are you supposed to stand up to him without getting blackballed, without getting basically blacklisted across the league, without having your reputation tarnished? You're a young player. You're 28th. You know, these guys, we lost Blackhawk 2K. We got it back.
Yeah, I'm back.
You have these guys who are second round picks. To anyone who thinks that it's not my place to say this, I'll tell you someone who did a great video on this. NBA storyteller. Go check out Kawhi, The Great Escape, to understand what is actually happening when these guys are drafting all these European prospects, all these second round picks, all these guys who are sort of tamed, guys from the G League, etc. They want these guys, they're easier to control. You draft a guy like Scotty Barnes, he's not going to be that easy to control. Like, he's got his own personality, he's got his own vision about his career, he got all that stuff, right? So the reality of the situation is having this sort of, controllee relationship is really problematic if the person in control has like specific biases towards how you ought to be. I think I see those biases present in how the media covers certain players. I've been watching this happen for 20 years, and it's painful because I saw this happen at the high school level with coaches. There were kids in my on my team who had to cover up tats. Right, who had to cover up tattoos. There was a rule. I remember we played a tournament. The coach had a rule: no do rags. What the fuck is that? That didn't impact me.
Back in high school,
that didn't impact me. So these specific rules, if you actually do the reading and the literature on it, having a particular response. Now, this comes back to the Pascal Siakam stuff, the Scotty Barnes stuff, and whatever. I want to say that I was having a conversation with my girlfriend yesterday about what this is, right? So who we're talking about is a kind of abstract conversation. If people don't want to hear what I have to say about this, like you can obviously piece. I'm not going to hold it against you, but I do have something. Don't worry. I have something interesting to say about this. So my girlfriend and I were talking about data usage. She has 40 gigs of data, right? Which is why she can stream stuff on her off of her hotspot or her mobile phone when I have to do these chats so that the Wi-Fi is clear for me. And I was like, I have 4 gigs of data. I have 4 gigs of data. They just gave me 2 extra, so I have 6 gigs of data. She's like, you're living in the Stone Ages. And I was like, this device is supposed to enslave my mind. It's giving, everything that's coming through this is fake. The connections that I make on here are fake. The content creators are fake. These IG models are fake. I mean, it's really crazy when you really think about the artificial reality that you're creating on your phone. You're getting everything that a human being needs, from connection to sex to everything, off of this one device. You use it for your calculator, you use it for Google. People like now you got these Apple Watches, and this shit is like crazy. You watch these people with Apple Watches, they're like, they got this shit on, like you're talking to them, they're like, oop, that vibrated. Shit's killing people's minds, and it's making them really isolated. People are very easy to control when they're isolated. They're a lot harder to control when they're connected. We're kind of seeing that in the Raptors offense right now. Everyone's isolated. Everyone's kind of an island on their own. However, so I was talking to her about like big picture. I don't want more data because I don't need more reasons to stay on my phone all day. I look at sometimes my screen time. I'm like 3 hours. I'm like, how the hell did I spend 3 hours on my phone? I don't want to spend 3 hours on my phone. So then I tied it back to what I want to do with Pensare basketball, and I was like, Pensare basketball is this crazy thing where it's like a productivity app. It's like they're using the thing that is killing people's minds and they're giving you a tool that frees your mind a little bit. You know what I mean? It's still on your phone, but it's a productivity app. It's telling you, get off your fucking phone. You've been on Instagram for 5 minutes, get off. It's helping you, right? That helps you. So I was like, okay, well, I think a lot of YouTube content is garbage. I think it's a lot of filler. I think it's a lot of gossip. But I'm like, man, if we could build this community up and one day we could have a conversation about like books that interest us. It's basketball still, you know, if I talk about, you know, talent code, if I talk about books like Atomic Habits, trust me, there are a lot of parallels and connections to basketball. But to be able to create a more conscious society, not an indoctrinated society that is just like boom, left, boom, right, but a society that sort of critically thinks for itself and can weed out some of this bias and bullshit that is existing in our media space, I think that would create a better, you know, a better human species, you know, because if people could really think, you know, when like, and I know that, you know, believe me, I am very, very aware that it is sometimes not my place to speak, but I grew up in the United States and you know, I spent some time in some states that have some horrible track records for like violence and atrocities in the 50s and 60s. And you see remnants of that shit everywhere. I felt it, and I know that people can't really see it from my face, but trust me, if you see me walk into a town that's like super duper white, I am the black guy, because I have dark skin, I have dark hair, I have dark eyes, I have, you know, dark facial hair. Trust me, like I've never been stopped at the border or anything like that, but the way I used to dress when I was young, I got stopped by the cops 3 times in 1 week. 1 week, you know? So like for me, it's like this shit is personal. It goes really deep. It goes really far back. It's impacted a lot of people that I really care about. And I just hope that people can see through that when these media guys, some of whom have never, ever they've never stepped foot in the hood. They don't understand. They see what they want to see because they're coloring things with their eyes. Look, if you're a Pascal Siakam fan, the comment that I'm about to make has nothing to do with race or gender or anything. It's about bias, right? When you are a Pascal Siakam fan, stan for life, you know, someone who just thinks this guy can do no wrong, you see the game different. You just have to see the game different. If you are a Scotty Barnes, you know, supporter for life, if you're someone who just cannot see Scotty's mistakes, you're seeing everything different. Today, I saw a video promoting Scotty's work with Skill Trade, you know, that Skill Trade stuff, the scholarship that he did. And there's these 4, and it was for people of color, and it was like 4 scholarships. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm like clapping. I'm like, wow, this guy's so great. You know, he's so amazing, like that he's so young and he's getting integrated in the community. And then I'm reminded that Pascal Siakam has probably done like 25 similar things so far. And I don't remember feeling that way about anything Pascal's done. Right. I remember feeling like, you know, happy about some work he's done.
The one with the laptops for all of the females.
There you go. What a great initiative. But if you don't like Pascal Siakam, you might view that as being like, oh, well, of course he's going to do that. He's making $70 million or $30 million, $40 million. It's very easy to have your subconscious biases color how you see the game on a given basis. If you're an undersized guard who never made it to the NBA, of course you're going to like Fred VanVleet a lot more than I'm going to like Fred VanVleet, you know?
But Rob, I have a problem with that one, right? Because there's a difference between a person's play or performance versus their humanity.
But can you draw the line? If you don't like, I mean, like hypothetically, if you have a thing, like if you're one of those old school people who thinks that, you know, players shouldn't, you know, dress a certain way, everyone should wear suits, how can you possibly cover Allen Iverson or Steven Jackson or Dejounte Murray fairly? If you think that a guy, you know, you like, there was a person on here, and I don't want to call this person out, but there was some real blood boiling when he was talking, when he said Scotty Barnes is not an intellectual. And it pissed me off as a person who understands the people around him, who knows that he was a really good student in Montverde, who was a really good student at Florida State. How fucking dare you say he's not an intellectual because he doesn't talk a certain way, and you color that into, oh, he's stupid. I had so many friends that I tell you I grew up with that were so smart, but because they talked a certain way, teachers would assume they were stupid. And it has nothing to do with anything. How you speak, whether you use certain slang or lingo, it's such a subconscious thing. But how can you tell someone how to talk?
So again, why am I drawing a situation that has nothing to do with the game? Why am I bringing that? So somebody's going to come in there and go with Scott. Well, did you spend time with Scotty? So that's why I don't pay attention to these comments, because they really have no relevance to who the person is or what they're doing. Scotty is only giving us a sliver of what goes on in his life. We can't see everything that Scotty does. We can't see everything that Pascal, Fred, Nick Nurse. We can't see what everybody does, but they're human, right? So we shouldn't be drawing these analogies that have nothing to do with the game, because that's all we get a picture into, except when the team posts on the website, the Toronto Raptors website, the activities that they're doing outside of the court. We only know so much, so why are we going there? It has nothing to do with the game. You know what I mean?
I want to tie this back to something that I think is a pro Raptors point, and then we'll, obviously can let you go and we can close up this chat. I think that the Raptors have been successfully able. Now, a lot of people say the Raptors like to draft African prospects because Masai Ujiri is African. I think if you look around the entire Raptors organization, you see a lot of diversity represented, from Masai Ujiri, to what was Dwayne Casey before, to Bobby Webster, who, despite what you may think, is not white. And you look at that, you see people who've walked through different walks of life. It's not just ethnic diversity. It's also background diversity. It's people coming from different countries, from Bobby Webster coming from Hawaii, coming from a different background, different cultural background. Masai Ujiri, of course, British born. Even Nick Nurse. You might not think of Nick Nurse as diverse, but his background relative to
what do you call it when you're from when you've traveled multiple countries? There's a word for this. So
I'm not sure if someone in the chat knows the word. But him having all this experience playing in different places, you look at the team composition from Fred VanVleet, kind of coming from the G League, coming from Wichita State, Chicago. You have different cultures. We had Yuta Watanabe last year. Diversity is a strength. But one of the things that I will say is, if you interviewed Scotty Barnes and Jalen Suggs, and you viewed these guys as equal prospects, and you interviewed them with a lens that was even partially racial, and I don't want to say racist, but I want to say racial, as in you grew up thinking that a person who talks a certain way is a certain way. Even if you have parents who thought that way, and that subconsciously has, put itself into your brain, you would probably have put Jalen Suggs over Scotty Barnes. Jalen Suggs, the way he presents himself, the way he talks, it's different than the way Scotty talks, right? Scotty mumbles a lot. Scotty's nah mean, a lot of nah means,
I don't think that was it. I honestly believe that people's viewpoint was skewed towards Jalen Suggs, because everybody was literally saying in their head, well, Kyle Lowry's leaving. We need a point guard. So because of
that's also a bias. That's also a bias, because Jalen is short, but he's not a point guard. See what I mean? That's also a bias. If you have a bias that point guards need to be short.
This is where people become sheep, because we're here as fans and we're saying, oh, we need this, but we don't really do the homework. And because we don't do the homework, we don't really know, okay, why did the Raptors turn around and pick Scotty? There's obviously a lot of things that go into it that they turn around and say, hey, it's not Jalen Suggs, it's going to be Scotty. And there's the things that we as fans don't understand, but we think we know. Because we're there watching the boob tube, and we're thinking that, hey, this is what a Raptors person. No, there's a lot that goes into this basketball, and it's bigger than what we think. I give credit to Masai and Bobby and the front office. Even though we're in a position, nobody could have predicted the amount of injuries that were going to happen, and it just happened like the perfect storm to bring us to where we are. But I'm not going to look on it and say this roster was a failure. No, it's not a failure. It's the perfect storm that happened, and now you're in a position now where you have to decide: can we feasibly go forward with this crew? Or do we have to mix it up and make some changes? That's no. I'm not in their shoes, but I'm watching, and I'm going to be watching eagerly. But I'm not going to say, well, they need to do this. Okay, what else I will say is, yes, we want another center. I want to see another. I'm not too sure I want another point guard, but I am sure that I want to see more shooters. When Weiskamp came on the floor, I was like, man, that looked good. You know what I mean?
I agree.
It looked good.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say, but I'm not gonna go in and say I want it to be this person, that person, that person.
I just want movement shooters,
really
man. I want
know.
movement shooters who,
Yeah.
because as players are moving around the court, they are consistently shifting the defense. And if players stagnate in one place, especially if they are non-shooters or non-shooting threats, if they are anything less than a 35% three-point shooter, which is basically the entire team right now, with the exception of Weiskamp and probably Malachi Flynn. I don't know. He had a bit of a slump there. I don't know where his percentages are right now. Everyone else on this team is pretty much 35 to 36% or less. And somewhere down, sometimes you have Scotty, who's probably at 29% now. You have Siakam, who's been lower. So, I mean, and also, like, these are moving averages. I mean, they move throughout the year. I mean, Scotty was at 35 to 40% to start the year, 50 to 52% for the first month. But Siakam's been low in the 20s at parts this year. Fred has been in a very low 30s. So, I think movement shooters are incredibly important. Rim rollers, guys who aggressively move into gaps on defense, are super important.
Precious.
You know, people,
Precious.
you know, Precious.
I'm going to say a word that's going to make you go, ah. But I'm going to say I can actually see why he's there, even though he's not producing as much as we would like him to produce. But I'm looking at Juancho and saying his cuts are so beautiful.
Oh, why would I say after that? I love Juancho. I didn't like him very much when we signed him, but he's one of the few guys who do exactly what I'm talking about.
He's got the movement, but he's not following through on making the basket. That's what my point would be. Is that if he was making it through the basket, like the 3-point shots aren't there yet. We were told that he was going to be a good 3-point shooter. On his resume.
Is okay. Can someone chat, let me know, am I banning Nigel Wilson right now? I know that there are a lot of people of color in the chat. Can you just let me know if I ban this dude? I don't think I'm in the position to say what the hell this is, but I'm here for basketball talk. He is done. I am done. Like I said before, non-blacks if you want. Like, can someone just tell me if I need to ban this dude? Because I will fast.
Yeah, but I thought we are talking basketball.
We are talking basketball. What are you going on about, bro? Like, shit. Like, this topic is really
we're talking about cuts, making cuts and 3-point shooting and stuff right now.
Yeah, what is this guy on about?
I think there's a problem where some people can't relate. I understand where you're going with, but in some cases I see the counter to that as well. As far as when it comes on to players being pigeonholed or based upon their previous history or so. Mm-hmm. But one of the other points I wanted to bring up is, okay, look at our situation when we had Terrence on the team and he got into his mix-up. The team didn't like that, but they didn't hang on to him year after year after year and later say, well, okay, now we're going to get rid of him. They basically immediately moved him off to Sacramento. When Dujounte is making the comments that he has made, I don't think Dujounte realizes that what he's saying is heavily skewed by his viewpoint. He's not looking into it to say, well, wait a second. If they really have those biases against me 100%, they wouldn't keep me. They would have shipped me out immediately. And that's something we have to consider. If they really were saying he's too ghetto, I'm going to use the word too ghetto because that's my kind of life talk, right? If they were going to say that's him, they would have gotten rid of him. You know what I mean? He said something there that really perked my ears up when he said, I went to the gym the first year and I worked on myself and got better. Well, wait a second. If you worked on yourself and got better, then you're admitting that you weren't that great in the first place.
I disagree with that completely.
Well, you can't get better.
Okay, first of all, what 28-year-old, what 28th overall pick or 27th overall pick, whatever he was, doesn't need to get better when he's a rookie. Of course, what his general point was is he wasn't playing. They put guys who were second rounders, undrafted prospects ahead of him. They're trying to fuck with his ego, right? They're trying to break the man.
But you're gonna say they're trying to F his ego, but I'm gonna say he already realized that he could get better, and he made himself get better.
I think this is a common shtick. If you look at what the Spurs have done over the years, you take Manu Ginobili, who, in my opinion, honestly, probably the second best shooting guard in his prime behind Kobe. You can argue D Wade, Manu, and Kobe. He came off the bench. Okay, you could talk Tony Parker, clipped his ass too. You can talk Steven Jackson, expressed too much personality. I'm telling you, to anyone who is deeply interested in this conversation, NBA Storyteller did this thing called The Great Escape. I promise you, go watch that and tell me it's not truth, because there are people who come from this background. They are super old. They grew up with these ideas about this is how a person needs to be. But I'm telling you right now, if you're the reason that Masai and Bobby and this organization have been so fucking good over the last 12 years is because they do not have a rigid definition of how you have to be. They see people, they meet people where they are, is my point. So they do not see someone who speaks a certain way because it's different from the way that they speak. Because if you look at Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster, of course, they are both eloquent, very well spoken, etc., very highly educated people. But they're not taking someone like Scotty Barnes and saying, oh, because he mumbles too much and he says, nah, mean, and he's from the hood, that I'm gonna discredit who he is as a person because of that. And they are meeting people where they are because they are not bigoted, and they are not racist, and they are diverse, and they're coming from that background. And I believe that if you want to be successful in business, learn your blind spots, because there are people out there who are really smart. But if you have a rigid definition of what's smart, and what smart includes wearing a blazer all the time or wearing like a 3-piece suit, then you're going to miss someone who's really good and really capable. And I tell you, I have run a lot of businesses. And I've hired people that maybe some people will be like, why are you hiring that person? And it's for whatever reason. It's maybe their educational background. It's because they don't speak English very well. They're coming from a different country. You know, they have an accent. They have a last name you can't pronounce. There are all sorts of subconscious biases. I swear to God, if you have a name like Doug Smith, not to put too fine a point on it, Doug fucking Smith, but if you have a name like Doug Smith, there's a lot of doors that are going to open for you than if you have a name like Mirza Teletovic or something like that, right? Even it's not specific to black people, brown people, Asian people, whatever. It is specific to anyone who is outside. I will say this though, a point, like to a final point of this, and I don't want to necessarily, I'll give you the final word on this, but the conversation around, and this is a point that has bothered me my whole fucking life. When a person who is not white, and I'm talking literally anyone, I'm talking Asian people, Indian people, South Indian people, Muslim people, any person who is not straight white man like that, right? When they do something, it always impacts their whole fucking community. It's always a reflection back. This guy's Muslim, he did that. Now every Muslim person has to have a bad day the next day. This guy's Sri Lankan, he did that. Now every fucking Sri Lankan person in the city has to have a bad day. Why do we not have this conversation initially sparked with what the hell's can you I'm hearing myself.
Girlfriend calling.
My bad.
She's on her way. She's on her way.
Okay. Sorry, I'm hearing myself. That's why. Sorry, this conversation started with Ime Udoka, right? So this conversation was Ime Udoka has done a disservice to all black coaches. This is fucked up. To me, that's fucked up. Why does Ime Udoka represent all black coaches? But what Greg Popovich does, I don't think that's closing any doors for white coaches. That to me is a problem. That's the problem I'm trying to address here. And I think that it's yeah. So I guess that's
yeah. And I get what you're trying to say. One thing though is it's kind of like you're pointing out, okay, how Masai and Bobby handle it, or how the MLSE team.
No, I'm not talking MLSE. I'm talking Raptors
Masai,
specifically, because there's a lot of people in this organization at the ownership level that are different. But I will tell you that Larry Tannenbaum, from everything that I've heard about him, seems to be pretty open-minded as well. A lot of people who've come through this organization, including the person who hired Masai Ujiri, have a bit of an open mind towards this, because I tell you, if you have a linguistic bias, then the way Masai Ujiri speaks may adjust your thinking on what his position would be in leadership. It's harder for someone who speaks a certain way, who looks a certain way, sometimes to get ahead, right? We can say this about women historically. We can say this about people who are marginalized from marginalized communities. We can say this from people who come from historically disadvantaged backgrounds. all of these things play into the the theoretical advantage or leg up you have, whether it be access to resources as a young kid, access to sort of familial wealth or whatever, generational wealth. I think that these things need to be addressed at the hip. And I believe that the easiest way, without, affirmative action and without all these, diversity mandates and stuff, I think that these things are somewhat masking the issue. But the real issue is meet people where they are. Meet people at a human level. Do not judge people for how they speak or because they don't speak English that well. Because there are people out there, I tell you, I know a person, he's from Croatia. This person came to Canada. He speaks Slovenian, Serbian, Croatian. Okay, that's kind of cheating because it's very similar languages. He speaks Italian, he speaks German, he speaks French. English, not so great. Somebody said to him, "You fucking idiot, why do you come to this country if you don't speak English?" That is fucked up. Like, it pisses me off so hard because that person has taken the time to learn like 5 or 6 languages and they're learning their 7th language. Yeah, and you fucking moron who speaks one language has a right to like call him stupid because he doesn't speak your language. That's fucked up. So it does not just impact people of theoretical, like people of color. It impacts a lot of people who don't fit into a box. So what I'm saying is, like, for people to be successful in leadership positions, you need to open your mind and open the box of what you think a leadership, person looks like. And I guarantee you, the more rigid your definition of what a leader looks like, the bigger your blind spot to the potential leaders you have in your organization. If you're a person who runs a law firm, you might have a really good person in your organization. You just can't see past them because they're too short or they're too old or they're too young, Exactly. Yeah. So, if you have an idea like this whole Thad Scotty thing, I think it exposed a lot about people's bias towards youth and age. Right? People have a bias and they're like, oh, well, if Thad had a disagreement with Scotty, it has to be Scotty's fault because Thad's old and Scotty's young. Well, that's stupid.
Again, I don't like to go into that narrative, and it's not about the fault issue. We don't know what it was specifically about. We do know that, first of all, there's no way that I'm going to look at it and say Thad was trying to bully Scotty and that perspective.
No one's saying that. I'm just saying, like, if you don't know the context of the conversation,
right. Which was,
if you have a bias towards an older person,
what I'm saying is, from my point of view, I don't think that Thad wanted the worst from him. He's trying to get to him, but he probably didn't do it the right way.
That's not my point. I don't care what Thad was doing. I don't know what Thad was doing. That's not even the point. What I'm saying is, without knowing the situation, if you find out, like if you have a past bias versus a future bias, if you find out that Fred and Scotty are not getting along and you automatically side with Fred without knowing the nature of their dispute, that's a past bias. You have a bias towards the past because this guy was with you in a championship, Scotty's new. So you say, okay, well, this guy's new, this guy's old. But being new to an organization doesn't make you wrong. It just makes you new. Same thing with the when I say age bias, you have a bias towards experience. So you might say, okay, in a company, you might be running a company one day, and you have someone who has 20 years experience, someone has 1 year experience. If you can't look at those two opinions and level them out and say, okay, well, it's possible, at least possible, that this new intern that I just hired, I'm a film director, and I remember one time there was a scene that I was directing that just was not working at all, and I was just like, it's typical for directors to be a bit power hungry and a little bit control freaky. And I was just like, I turned around to my crew and I was like, look, does anyone have a suggestion that I might be missing because I'm over caffeinated and underslept right now? And a PA who was 18 years old came to the call. She said, she whispered in my ear. She said, da, 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 adjust this, adjust that. Perfect suggestion. I didn't think of it. She did. Guess what? She's brilliant. I'll tell you another story. I directed a film called Penny. It is a controversial film. It is about the shooting. It is about police shootings. And this film, we had a 16-year-old who was very bright, Asian kid named, Asian Canadian kid named Ethan Ng. His application just jumped off at me. And everyone on my crew, my producers are telling me, you can't hire a 16-year-old. I'm like, legally, I can hire a 16-year-old. It's just awkward as fuck because it's a night shoot. This guy's parents drove him to set. It was adorable. He comes out, he's super eager, and he shakes my hand, and he's like, thank you for hiring me. This is the first time anyone's hired me. Everyone keeps not hiring me because I'm 16 years old. And it was a volunteer position. I was like, I'm gonna insist on paying you. Okay? 4 years later, 4 years from that day later, that was his first official film experience. 4 years later from that day, he became the youngest filmmaker ever selected to Slamdance in Utah, one of the biggest film festivals in the world. He became the youngest filmmaker ever selected to the features competition. I was so incredibly proud of this guy. He's so creative, so smart. He's one of like the, aspiring up and coming directors. To see him as he was in that moment, past the bias, past the age bias, racial bias, whatever bias you have in your head, to be able to meet this guy and say, this is a tenacious, smart, hardworking kid. Who fucking cares that he's 16 years old? He will be a valuable contributor. And if someone makes a fuss about someone being young in your organization, there are so many people that have come up, through companies that I've run in various capacities, and they're so brilliant. And just identifying these people when they were young was such a cool thing. Identifying them because they were new to the country was such a crucial thing. A friend of mine, Vinko, he was washing buses. And I hired him for like a way more serious role. And he's just like, thanks for hiring me. No one's hiring me right now because they can't pronounce my name and I can't pronounce theirs. So it's these biases that I think, if to the 230 people watching right now, I hope that this either is something that you've wanted to hear discussed, or maybe something you haven't heard discussed because this just isn't the stuff you're into. But I hope that this impacts how you run your companies, or, anyways, so I'm done with this conversation. You have anything else to say?
No, I gotta actually pick up the girlfriend downstairs.
Yeah.
So I gotta run actually. But
right.
Great conversation as usual. Great
Cheers,
conversation. I can't do much about the implicit biases that you see there. And I agree to many points about it. But also we also have to evolve as people. So that's another thing that we also have to consider. Even when there's obstacles in front of us, we gotta evolve. We can't let that hold us back. You know what I mean? So we push forward. We don't stay stagnant. So that's my position on that. Otherwise, I would have never reached where I am in life if I let everything hold me back. It's just the way it is. I'm looking at the Dujounte video there. As I said, to me, I'm seeing him push forward, even though he's not happy about the situation. That's what I'm seeing out of it there, because you don't get better if you don't put the work in. You have to do it regardless of the obstacles in front of you, or you could just stand still and wait until the situation corrects itself. But your time is valuable. Maybe you may not have the opportunity to wait. That's why he worked on himself.
All right. Thanks a lot, Blackhawk 2K. I appreciate it, man.
All right.
Cheers. Thanks for the conversation. Okay, moving on. We have Alex and your goat, and then we're going to wrap this hopefully by the 3-hour mark. I know I'm sorry guys for going a little bit off tangent there. It was relevant to me when I saw that Dejounte Murray thing. I've mentioned in past streams that there are certain players in this league that I adore, and it goes like beyond basketball. It goes to who they are as people, and that includes Dejounte Murray, that includes Scotty Barnes, it includes Jayson Tatum, it includes a lot of people in this league who are just really great people, who've come up through great families. And I feel like sometimes using a platform as small as this to shine a little bit of light onto who they are as people, I think is important, because at the end of the day, yes, these are basketball players, but they are also people. Alex, what's up?
Hey Rob, how are you doing?
I'm good. Are you a first-time caller?
No, I've called in a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to talk. I didn't really want to talk about this. I wanted to talk about like the connectedness, but I do want to touch upon the biases that you're talking about.
Okay, if it's quick, I realize the chat is like really aggressively against any further bias talk, but I if you have a comment about it, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, just quick comments.
Sure.
For people that enjoy reading, there's a book called The Undoing Project, and
I've heard of it.
If you don't want to read the book, it's fine. Most of it is about behavioral economics, but there is one chapter about how Daryl Morey tackles biases in his own practice. Because a lot of people talk about like all these conscious biases, all these obvious biases.
I've read the book, and I know the chapter. I believe it was an entire chapter devoted to Daryl Morey and how he looks past player comps, etc.
Yep.
Yes, I've read it, and I think it's a great book to anyone who is interested in how Daryl Morey thinks. He's really offbeat and kind of weird, but I enjoyed reading it. I'm not like, it's interesting. There's a lot of stuff by Malcolm Gladwell as well, that I think could point to this. What was the book by Malcolm Gladwell that really points to this? Outliers. Outliers is a great book as well. It talks about, how baked in biases about age at a very young age we promote. Like, for instance, like Malcolm Gladwell talked in Outliers, he talked about how if you look at a lot of teams, there's a larger concentration of players born January, February, March, because those were the kids who were dominating at a very young age, at age 8, 9, 10 in youth leagues. And then those are the kids who get promoted up, because really at the age of 9, when you're judging basketball players, you're not usually picking the best basketball player. Often you're picking the tallest or the oldest basketball player. And a guy born in January, especially when the cutoff is the calendar year, Jan 1, guy born January 2nd on the same court as someone born December 29th, it's pretty crazy. However, interesting note, LeBron James, I think, was born December 31st. So kind of interesting to see how he's managed to become the second greatest player of all time. So he's an outlier among outliers. Anyway, so someone says Tipping Point, also good book. I agree. Yeah. So anyways, do you have your point about connectedness?
Yeah. So a lot of people talk about like motion. A lot of people talk about why can't we run more complicated schemes, and I think it comes down to personnel.
You don't think we have the personnel to run motion?
No. Our players are not that intelligent. If you look at the best motion offenses historically, these are teams that are loaded with intelligent players, right? And it's not even just like playmaking. It's like how you set a screen. When are you setting the screen? What angle are you setting the screen? The timing between the screen setter and the playmaker. Okay. There's a huge difference between Chris Boucher and Serge Ibaka. There's a huge difference between your decision maker being Kyle Lowry versus Fred versus Siakam, right? Like if you look at the Spain pick and roll, right? Like if you look at how we executed that in 2018, 2019, and even going as far back as 2016 versus how we execute it now, the difference comes down to personnel. A lot of the stuff we still run to this day. Like there's a huge difference between Kyle Lowry, being the guy that's making decisions as the ball handler versus Fred and versus Siakam, right? Like if you look at what Siakam's responsibilities were in the Spain pick and roll back then, he was just setting a screen and then popping out to the corner. That's okay. Like relatively speaking, that's a lot easier than what you're giving him now. Right. And so that's going to result in a lot of differences in how these schemes play out and how basketball is being played out. Right. Sure. And going back to like iso ball, right? If you're not very good at reading the floor, even if you have a motion ball offense, right? Even if that is your philosophy, that's still going to result in a lot of iso ball. Because if you're not that great at reading the floor, every possession, you're just going to think iso ball is the best play. Iso ball is the best play. Right?
What do you think about the fact that there have been various times where players on this team have said that Nick Nurse does not coach offense, that he does not dictate, pecking order, that he allows players to play free, that provided you play defense on the court. Like, Pascal has talked about freedom on offense. Gary has talked about freedom on offense and how refreshing it is. We have seen Fred talk ad nauseum about freedom on offense. So I think, this is just the Nick Nurse way. And when the freedom on offense is being given to really high IQ basketball players, right? Like guys like Marc Gasol, guys who are just over themselves a little bit. And especially when your leaders are high basketball IQs, because then it's like the ideal place to be as an NBA team is always you want your locker room to police itself, right?
Right.
So to have like this sort of, to people who say, well, it's all on Nurse, why can't he rein these guys in or whatever? Well, like, I mean, you do need buy-in from your team, right? You need at some point you need your team to agree to play for you, and you're asking them to do a lot on defense. So the carrot dangling here is, okay, we're gonna give you some freedom on defense, So we're going to give you freedom on offense, but you're going to buy in on defense. And so I guess the question I want to ask you is, what do you, which players, if you had to identify, and I'll ask the chat as well, chat, if you had to pick one player that sticks out to you above all else as low IQ, kind of what Alex is describing here, like players who don't fit into the motion offense, who is that one player that you think? Just give me a name, one name. Let's see. And Alex, I guess I'll ask you as well as these answers come in. We're getting Boucher. Wow, okay.
I definitely agree with Boucher.
It's Boucher. Boucher. Probably Boucher. Wow. This is crazy.
I mean, like, when it comes to starters, I think an underrated option is OG. I think because he plays very good defense, a lot of people overlook a lot of other weaknesses that he has.
Wow. Someone's saying Doughton. Are you kidding me? Clutch
No.
Tatum, VanVleet. I severely disagree. I'm sorry. VanVleet is probably one of your smarter players.
I think Doughton is a very intelligent player. I think it comes down to shooting.
Yeah.
He's not a very good shooter. Even if you look at the G League, I don't think he has made like a single 3-point shot. He might have made one this entire season in G League. I think his lack of playing time comes down to his lack of shooting.
Yeah. James Walsh is asking, I fell asleep a little over an hour ago. What did I miss? I don't know if that's sarcastic, man, but you missed a conversation about implicit biases and race and culture and being from the hood. So, you're free to rewind that, although I very much doubt you will. Okay. So, all right. I don't know. I think I've seen, so in the playoffs, I really loved Chris Boucher and Thad Young. That was a dynamic that I really liked for the second unit. Thad was in playmaking positions in the middle of the court. Chris Boucher was cutting aggressively. If you look at the analytics, it would argue that Chris Boucher was a top 3, top 4 player for you in the playoffs easily. Where is that Chris Boucher? Did he forget how to play basketball? I doubt it. I mean, this is just, I think he's being scapegoated a little bit. I think
it's just variance. I think they had a great matchup. They needed the energy, but I don't think it was necessarily him making the right reads.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like his entire body of work, right?
Right.
It comes like he's more of an energy player. Like he will run down to get the rebound, right? But
Right.
it's not him recognizing what his teammates are doing, right? Like he's just like on a one-track mind. Like he's just hustling to get the rebound, right? Like that is his objective. But like he's not looking at like the overall big picture. And
Right.
I think like a lot of players on the Raptors are like that. Like I was saying, I think OG, a lot of people don't actually look at his game very objectively because he plays defense. He plays very elite defense, but like they're not evaluating his game on how well he's reading the floor when it comes to offense, right? Like a lot of people say that like our team is very talented, but like they're overlooking a lot of the problems that we have. And I think it comes down to intelligence. I think it comes down to processing what needs to be done on the floor. I mean, even with a guy like Siakam, like he doesn't process the floor as quickly as a guy like Barnes. You literally see it with.
I think Todd has the greatest point here. He says, I think leadership sets the style, in my opinion. I agree. A lot of these guys that we're accusing of being absolute morons right now played with Kyle Lowry, and they did not play quite like morons. I don't remember anyone like, Chris Boucher was newer to basketball. He picked up basketball a little bit later. He had a later path to basketball. Siakam, same thing. But look, man, Siakam during the championship run, he was spacing out to the corner. He's flashing into the paint. He's obviously capable of this. Fred VanVleet in spurts is very capable. He's a highly intelligent basketball player. He knows all the plays. He knows all the schemes. He knows all the defensive rotations. He's a student of the game. Scotty Barnes, student of the game. Thad, student of the game. Otto, admittedly not playing, student of the game. Malachi, Jeff Doughton. You have a lot of intelligence on this team. Why are they playing this stupid brand of basketball? That, is beyond me. Anyways, Alex, you have any final points?
I guess my final point is that I think it comes down to personnel. I don't necessarily think it's coaching. When people
Mm-hmm.
talk about coaching, I think a lot of it comes down to like correlations, not causation.
Sure.
Just because a coach was there, during this golden age of development doesn't necessarily mean that they were the reason for that development.
I agree.
Nick Nurse did a lot developing the 905. He wrote the plays for Stackhouse. There's a lot that can be said, and for Nick Nurse when it comes to development. And yeah, that's basically it.
There's also like residual, right? Like sort of impact, like delayed impact, what I would say, right? Sometimes, like the work that Nick Nurse did with Jonas Valanciunas didn't show up for us. It showed up for the Pelicans. It showed up when he moved on to the Grizzlies. That's where it showed up, right? He suddenly started to get, he credits Nick Nurse for the shooting stuff, right? The playmaking stuff that came for DeMar in a lot of it is coming now as a Bull. It was developed in San Antonio. I realize I've been pretty shitty about San Antonio so far in this episode, but I think that there is some credence or validity to saying that sometimes you develop a guy like a Precious Achua, you give him all these ideas and skills, and you develop all these things. And maybe it doesn't work out for you, but then 2 years down the line, he completely works out for somebody else, right? You just give up a little too quick. You don't see it. You're too impatient, maybe. Or maybe he just needs to change the scenery. Sometimes guys just need to change the scenery because they need a new voice. They need a new situation. Sometimes changing situations has a huge impact subconsciously on our minds in terms of untangling familiar patterns. Just the idea, like to anyone out there who's looking to change their life, I promise you, if you're right-handed and you do everything with your left hand for a single day, you will change your life for that day. You'd be surprised. Get used to brushing your teeth with your right hand. Brush your teeth with your left hand. Just see how it goes. Just see how it changes your day. It's crazy how these familiar patterns can think. Anyways, Alex, thanks a lot for coming on. I really appreciate this conversation, and thanks for the book recommendation, man.
Yep, no problem. Take care.
Cheers. And finally, we have our friend from the Detroit Pistons fan base, Your Goat, to make us feel a little bit better. Hey, Your Goat, how are you?
It's good, man. Hope you've been feeling a little bit better after that stupid spamming stuff. But
we've been good. We've only had to shut down. I think we've only had to block about 25 users so far. We're 3 hours into the stream. I think that's progress over yesterday.
Yeah. That's good. But before I actually ask you a question, I just want to apologize for that dog shit trade I gave to you 2 days ago. I listen. I wanted to give you Sadiq Bey and more stuff, but I was just kind of like biased, so I apologize.
Wait, you think you won that trade?
No, absolutely not. I said it's horrible trade. I wanted to put more players in, but I got kind of biased. So
wait a second. Hold on. I'm confused. You gave me Jalen Duren for Gary Trent Jr.
No. In the OG trade, I wanted to get OG, and I put a bad trade offer. I wanted to put Sadiq Bey in, but I like Sadiq Bey, so I kind of got like, nah, you know what? I'm gonna put these players in.
I mean, okay, so you were gonna offer me what? Sadiq? You were gonna offer me Sadiq and Jalen Duren for OG,
and maybe Bogdan or like a future first round pick for them.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting because I mean, Bogdanovich doesn't really help me tank. He actually helps me win.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I like Jalen Duren a lot, man. I think the Pistons have some really interesting young pieces. I just think like, it's time. Like I think you guys might be in a similar situation. You have so many guys who need the ball. Like Sadiq is one of the guys that I really like on the Pistons. Jalen Duren I like too. But how does a backcourt of Ivy, Cade Cunningham, and Killian Hayes really work long term? One of these guys is going to be on the bench. And they're all the same age. Like they're all guys who don't know who the fuck they are.
Yeah.
This is the problem of going in the lottery every single year. Unless you develop an apex predator on that team that everyone buys into, like sort of what the OKC Thunder have done with Shea, I don't see how this works out for you long term. And I'm not sure that Cade is that guy, but maybe you'll get that guy this year's draft. Who knows?
I'm pretty sure. In terms of what you said, the backcourt of Cade, Killian and Ivy, I think it's pretty clear to me that Killian needs to be on the bench or even traded. He's just too inconsistent for me. But my question to you, because I remember you asked me before about how it is to deal with tanking and that stuff. I wanted to ask you about how you guys draft. You guys are very good at identifying talent and developing them. I've seen it a lot with Pascal, OG, Scotty Barnes, and that's the one thing that throughout all these years of being a Pistons fan, I've been the most angry about is we have drafted horribly and then developed them even worse, which kind of
That's a
puts us
fair
back.
assessment.
Kind of puts us back even like
I liked your draft
years.
last year. I won't lie. I mean, I'm not the biggest Jaden Ivey fan. I probably would have picked Dyson Daniels personally, but I love Jalen Duren. I think that was a really good pick. Although you could argue if you guys picked Dyson Daniels and Walker Kessler in those two places, yikes! Like you're probably a play-in team right now.
Yeah, but my question to you is, how do you think? I mean, I know this is something that all franchises should do and could do, but Pistons have never really done that until now. How do you think the Raptors do this just so easily?
Well, in years past, when development has been in the golden years, how they did it was, I think, a several-pronged process. Number one, it was identifying certain metrics that have good projections for shooting that don't show up in the box score. I'll give you an example. Watching Pascal Siakam at New Mexico State, right? You're obviously aware that the college three-point line is a little bit more condensed into the court, right? So you have a player like Pascal, you have a guy like OG, you have a guy like Scotty Barnes, you have a guy like Precious Achiuwa. What do these four guys have in common?
Those four guys, in terms of, can you rename it?
Scotty, Pascal, OG, Precious. These are four of the best, in my opinion, finds for the Raptors.
I like their defense a lot. I think in common they have good defensive ability, although Pascal this month, I saw your stream, defensively has not been great. But all of them have been good defensively at least. Offensively, maybe in terms of, I mean, could you explain to me offensively? Because defensively, I think they're all great.
So here's the thing. They have a couple of things in common. Number one, they have they fit a very valuable player type, which is a switchable big wing, right? Kind of like you're not having, because it's very difficult to take a guy like Keegan Murray, for instance, right? He's a big dude, right? But he doesn't really have the lateral mobility, whatever, to be a good defender, right? He doesn't have like massive upside in terms of, so we have a player profile that requires, to some extent, with the exception of Fred VanVleet, Malachi Flynn, plus size wingspan. I think that's important. 3 of those guys have flashed shooting potential from mid-range and improvement from the line, right? Shooting potential, free throw shooting advancement growth at the free throw line year over year, from, especially when you're looking at, guys who are not freshmen. So OG only spent 1 year. He had the injury and then he went to the draft because he was a highly touted prospect. But in the case of guys, and Precious was the same way, I believe. And did Precious spent only 1 year? Yes, Precious spent only 1 year at Memphis. And Scotty was the same way. These were 3 higher touted prospects. But guys like Pascal, guys like Fred, guys like Christian Coloco, you had a bigger body of work. Delano Banton, you had bigger, longer bodies of work where you could evaluate their growth year over year. I think too many people, what they see is what they get when it comes to, they just evaluate March Madness. They don't track early enough. Even if they do track early enough, when it comes to evaluating a player, they have a massive recency bias. So if a guy has a really hypey, like for instance, Jalen Suggs, I could tell you right now, Jalen Suggs, Cade Cunningham, those 2 players, I watched them in high school. I watched them grade 11, grade 12, first year college. The growth that I saw from their game year over year was not what I saw from Evan Mobley's game. What I knew about those guys kind of coming into the draft, it was different. So I've reasonably, I think accurately projected the Raptors to their last 2 draft picks accurately, Christian Coloco and Scotty Barnes. And part of that is because I know what they're looking for. Number 1 is plus wingspan. Number 2 is growth over the last 3 years, not just where were they last year. Because if you think just where were they last year, well, Jalen Suggs' Gonzaga team, my God, that was such a dominant team. Scotty Barnes' FSU team, not so dominant, right? There's all these subconscious biases that we've talked about already in this show that kind of frame your thinking away from one guy and towards another guy. You might see that Jalen Suggs half-court shot that he hit And you might be like, oh my God, that guy's great. You know, you might see a guy like, I don't know, Marvin Williams at a blue blood program. Maybe you have a bias towards blue blood programs. So I think if I'm the Raptors, I think of it this way. I look at guys who show growth potential over the span of 3 years, whether those 3 years include Team USA, international play, high school, university, 3 years at university. I look at a guy like Christian Coloco. I see growth in his game. Every single year at Arizona, I'm seeing him get better. That tracks for me. It may not work out always. I look at impact metrics. These guys really are big on impact metrics. Every single player that they've drafted has shone in certain impact metrics that I don't necessarily want to go into right now. It's too much. The third thing I look for is obviously the plus wingspan. Fourth is, do they love the game? This is the hardest thing to identify. You do have to get to know a guy. You have to understand his practice habits, who he is off the court, the people around him, what he's like in practices, what he's like to his teammates, and build up what I consider a sort of psychological profile of, like who is this player when he's pushed into, a difficult situation? Who is he when he's coached hard? Who is he when he's not, coached up as much? So I think that these things are really important to understand who the prospect is. So, you might look at a guy like Jaden Ivey and you might say, okay, well, he hasn't really grown that much over 3 years. I look at a guy like Cade specifically because Cade and Sadiq are the two guys that I know best on your team. I look at a guy like Cade and I'm like, man, he was just so advanced. For him to not dominate in college is a very big red flag for me. Some people will say, oh, well, he didn't have great teammates. Why did he choose that school? The decision to go to Oklahoma State, to me, is a red flag for him. There's a lot of stuff where I'm like, I think the Raptors can pick up on this stuff. His impact metrics in college weren't great. Tamberlin said, that he's not a great defender. I disagree. I think Cade could be a dominant defender. He has all the tools to be a really good defender. He hasn't been a great defender because defense is a team skill. But yeah, so I think that all of those things, look, I think most scouts understand a lot of this stuff. I just think that the Raptors track so early. Like, they've been scouting Scotty Barnes since he was 15 years old, 14 years old. They heard about him when he was in, elementary school with Team USA. They've been following him up since he was 15, U15, U16. So they have measured his growth. So like when you have to look at it as like they're measuring him on a longer timeline than a lot of other people who just see a guy and they'll say, oh, he's not a shooter. They're tracking his mid-range shot percentage. They're not just three-point shot percentage. And to the final point, like Siakam, he flashed a lot of long two potential at New Mexico State. Christian Coloco flashed a lot of shooting potential as well. Once you see that a guy is developing that, number one, you get a really good track record into his work ethic. You start to gather like how he trains. Who is he training with? Has he aligned himself with the right people? Who are his parents? All of these things matter. Once you learn to evaluate this very well, I think you become a very good scout.
Yeah. But I heard one thing you said, which was Raptors are, especially in the last 3 years, that they've gotten high, like 6'8", 6'9", forwards that can switch and that. And I remember we had one player, which I really wish we could have developed more, and that's Stanley Johnson. I remember when he was at Arizona, he was putting up good numbers. His defense was good. I liked his mid-range shot, but I felt like we could have developed him way more than we did,
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's getting really hard to listen to you because you do have a dog barking in the background. I apologize.
My bad. Let me close the door.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so my bad. I was saying that there was one player that I do remember, which had a lot of talent, but we didn't develop him right, which was Stanley Johnson. What do you think about him?
No.
No, I mean
I've watched him a lot. I've watched him in summer runs. I've watched him play pickup. I don't see it. I get why people are seduced by him because he has sort of like that Ron Artest build. He's super physical. He's really tall. He just doesn't process the game well at all. So I look at guys who process the game well. How quickly are they making decisions? We brought up Skal Labissiere earlier. This was a guy who it was so projectable. You had real serious and I mean very serious talent scouts, calling this guy the next Anthony Davis, the next Karl Anthony Towns. His own college coach, said that they tried to play him as the next Karl Anthony Towns. Do you remember him? 2016 draft, class of 2015.
He was first in high school, right? He was
yes, he was
ranked number 1, and I remember.
And so a guy like that, you got to look at what did you miss with him? Feel. How he processed the game was absolutely terrible. How quickly he made decisions, how fast the game was for him. And, if you're not ready for NCAA basketball, you're not ready for the NBA. I mean, he had, I think, 3 or 4 years in the NBA and he was out. So I think it's just like you get too seduced. You have to, I think the other thing that scouts need to do is evaluate your own blind spots. Do you have player comps are the most dangerous thing, because you start comparing guys to Anthony Davis, you start seeing things that aren't really there. I think there's also a bias towards physicality. Guys who see like 42-inch vert, and you assume that a guy should be able to do certain things with 42-inch vert. And the thing goes for the inverse as well. When you see a guy, like the one of the biggest examples of this, I remember talking to a scout in 2006, 2007. Kevin Durant, probably my favorite draft prospect in NBA history. I've never been so hyped for a guy in my life. I made this video about him, and I said he was going to be the next Michael Jordan. I think he's so amazing. And I remember this talent scout, and he's like, are you at least a little bit worried about the fact that he couldn't bench 185 once? And I said, he has a 7'7" wingspan. You try to bench 185 once. People don't get it. They don't understand, because they compare it in a vacuum. You cannot compare a guy like Dylan Brooks, or, he's 18, 19 years old. Yeah, he couldn't bench press once. It's not bench press, it's basketball. And it's so stupid how things like that, the fact that he went to a blue blood school, if you're from a blue blood school, or if you have a particular affinity for guys who went to those schools, if you're really big on measurables like wingspan, right? How did the Raptors miss on Desmond Bane? 6'4" wingspan, T-Rex arms, right? They just couldn't see how a guy like that could be a plus defender. I'll tell you right now, the way they play, maybe a guy with negative wingspan probably couldn't fit in on this roster. Guys like Tyler Hero, guys like Desmond Bane, maybe. But man, negative wingspan and shooting are linked. You want to have guys with long arms and long and big hands. You're going to give it up on the shooting sometimes, because guys with longer arms, Kevin Durant notwithstanding, Kawhi Leonard notwithstanding, aren't typically the most, conventional shooters. You look at the history of like great shooters in the NBA, you see a lot of guys with pretty short arms. Fred VanVleet, JJ Redick, Desmond Bane, Tyler Hero. Like there's a lot of, I think it's like the longer arm creates more mechanical, it's a longer thing. So
I agree with you. But as I said, I mean, it does really frustrate me that the Pistons, we draft a guy like Henry goddamn Ellenson over Pascal Siakam, Malik Beasley, Caris LeVert.
I want your live reaction to this. Barnes' potential is Draymond Green. Mark Anderson, you ding 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 ding. You get applause for probably the most ridiculous comment of the night, and I couldn't have imagined it coming from anybody else. So congratulations to you, man. His potential is Draymond Green. Do you see him put up 29 points? When have you ever seen Draymond Green like? Have you ever seen Draymond Green average 20, 23, 24 points per game over a 5-game stretch? Come on, man.
Never.
Jesus. His
like
floor
Draymond,
is higher than... Okay, look, Draymond Green is a generational defender. I don't think Scottie is going to get there. Draymond Green is a passer. I think Scottie will get there. But as a scorer, you have to be fucking out of your mind if you think that Scottie Barnes, an above the rim athlete who's 6'8", 6'9", with just crazy athleticism and burst. Do you know where Draymond Green was when he was 21? He was still in college. Are you kidding me?
This is the thing I see with some fans of the Raptors. I mean, they get kind of impatient with Scottie Barnes. I've seen some tweets, and Scottie Barnes is this, his potential is this, and like, listen, when we drafted Stanley Johnson, although you're not too high on him, we loved him. We still, I mean, I remember we all loved him. We were still pushing him on. Even in the second year where he was horrible, we were still pushing him on. And Scottie Barnes is a generational talent. I love how he plays. I love his work ethic. And I see like 50% of Raptors media just saying he didn't work hard enough. He needs to do this. And his ceiling is this and that. Draymond Green. So it's kind of like frustrating for me because...
Well, that's the problem. You see, like I brought this up with his trainer as well, that Draymond Green comparison is so dumb because it actually taints how people viewed him. I mean, thank God for those comparisons, right? So sometimes you have like European prospects that have like the wrong measurable. Maybe they've grown, but there's a measurement out there that they're 6'10", but now they're 7 feet. Now, whether they are 6'10" or 7 feet probably doesn't move the needle a lot. But the minute they move to 7 feet, people measure them. They're like, oh my God, this guy's 7 feet. He has to move up 20 spots in the draft. No, he doesn't. You know, it's all of these attachments to these ridiculous things. And Draymond Green being the comp, I tell you, if Scotty Barnes is drafted like 5 years prior, Trickster, I understand you're interested in Nickeil Alexander Walker. I'm sorry, I don't watch a lot of Jazz games, so I don't have a lot there. But please stop typing in all caps. You just sound absolutely deranged. Yeah. So, sorry, what was I saying there?
Yeah, you were talking about Draymond Green.
Right, the Draymond comp, when it came out for Scotty, the problem is the timing of it, because that's when the Warriors were in the lottery, and Draymond Green, you know, Draymond is just one of those offensive, you know, he's a piece that amplifies all of the pieces. So when you put like a whole bunch of young players and scrubs around him, he's probably not going to play so well.
Yep.
He's not one of those guys who's like Drew Holiday, where like, okay, if he's playing with lesser talent, he can move up 3 levels and be your alpha scorer. He can't do that. It's not his game. He's not quite the finisher or the athlete to be able to do that. He's just a facilitator, ball mover, connector, short roll passer. If he's passing to freaking James Wiseman, it's not going to work. So when you look at, what's up?
But I mean, Draymond Green was really put in a great situation. I mean, you know, he has good qualities. I like his passing. He's a great defender, but he was just put in a great situation. I remember, I think David Lee got injured, and then he got into the starting lineup, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's
Steve Kerr put him in the starting lineup.
Steve Kerr put him in the starting lineup, and then he just started working great for the Warriors because that's what the Warriors needed. Then again, if you put him on any other squad, I don't think he's going to perform as well as he did in the Warriors. But if you put Scotty Barnes in another squad, he's going to perform as good, if not better. That's the difference between Draymond Green and Scotty Barnes, in my opinion. And
I just think they're really different
Scotty,
players. I don't see the comp. I get it. They're big. They're facilitators. I get it. But this comp comes from Scotty's season at Montverde, I think, because he played next to Cade. I don't know. What are people saying? Is Cade Steph in this comparison? I have no idea. I mean, he played with Cade and Moses Moody, so maybe they just saw him as a sort of connector type. And people haven't really seen, you know, they saw short roll potential passing, potential. But I just think that that's such a misrepresentation. I've heard people compare him to Magic. I've heard people compare him to Scottie Pippen. Seen a lot of people, you know, especially compare him to a young Tracy McGrady. Interesting note, he passed Tracy McGrady as most 20-point games before the age of 22 very recently. So that was pretty cool. Yes, he did.
Wow.
As a Raptor. As a Raptor.
As
a Raptor. Tracy McGrady scored a lot of 20 plus point games, I think, when he went to Orlando in his 4th year. But that being said, thanks a lot for coming on, Your Goat. I really appreciate it. We're going to wrap up the chat here.
Man.
But
thank you so much for letting me on. It's always great talking to you, even though
Likewise.
I'm a Detroit fan. I like talking to Raptors people. And last thing to
we'll
know,
be battling for lottery balls very soon, man. That's going to be fun.
It's going to be the greatest match ever. Battle of the lottery picks, man.
Wemby going east. Wemby going east. Okay, Wemby going
I
east.
hope so.
Hopefully, Scoot going west. All right. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much,
it.
man.
Cheers. All right. So much for, we're going to keep this under 2 hours, right? I mean, we went off on a tangent, but that I went off on a tangent. Anyway, thank you all for bearing with that and giving me a chance to speak. I know some of the stuff we covered today was not really about basketball. It was about life, and I hope that it was interesting enough for you. I usually say that stuff for the very end so that people can leave and not miss out on any of the basketball stuff. But anyway, tough loss tonight. You know, over the last few games, the Raptors have been without a lot of players. The Raptors' opponents have been without a lot of players. They have missed a ton of stars. Like, you didn't see Karl-Anthony Towns, you didn't see Jayson Tatum tonight. Teams are just beating us without their guys. The Bucks played without Giannis and won. They played without Chris Middleton and won. They also played, tonight we faced a team in the second half without Rob Williams, Jayson Tatum, and Marcus Smart. You know how big a part of the Boston Celtics. I mean, granted, I think what it's showing is there's a tier in the East, of serious teams, and we can call it Boston, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Brooklyn, if you want to include Cleveland in that bunch. And I think that they are just a gap above the not so serious kind of puncher's chance teams of which, you could probably include Philadelphia. I think then there's like fringy teams, right? Like Chicago, Washington, Atlanta, just flawed cores that just haven't worked out for whatever reason due to injury, fit, whatever. And I think then there's us. And I think if you're asking me, we're a lot closer to the Detroit Pistons and the Houston Rockets right now in terms of not only record, but also style of play, efficiency, star player, all that stuff. I think we're a lot closer to that heap than we are to the Boston Celtics and the Denver Nuggets of the world. And I have to say that to be real. This team plays a lot like those lottery teams. There's a lot in common with those lottery teams. You might look at the Houston Rockets and say the Houston Rockets probably have about as much talent. You could argue. It's hard to argue, but you could argue the Houston Rockets, Denver Nuggets, the Houston Rockets or the Detroit Pistons probably have as much talent as a team like Utah. Or they certainly don't have the star that OKC does, but maybe depth and range of talent across the bench. Maybe they do. But at some point, you have to optimize the talent that you actually have on your team. And I don't think the Raptors have done that very well. I don't think the Houston Rockets have done that very well. They're certainly not using Usman Garuba and Jabari Smith Jr., Eric Gordon. They have pieces. Just these pieces are not optimized. I think the Raptors have pieces. I think the Raptors are so much more talented than their record. But time and time again, late game brain farts, droughts that last 3, 4, 5 minutes, they just kill this team. Consistently losing the 3-point battle is not something that signals to me that this team lacks 3-point shooters only. It's that this offense does not produce enough 3-pointers. Because they're not just, okay, yeah, you'll look at certain nights where they attempt a ton of threes, but they're not good threes. They're above the break, in transition, crazy contested, late clock. They're not great threes. They're not threes usually when the ball has moved from side to side, it's gotten a paint touch, and it's floating out. Now, 7 games under 500. I just want to quickly flash the schedule before we get out of here. This is the Raptors' upcoming schedule. So I want to understand sort of how this could go for this team. Projected losses, I think it's very possible they lose the next 6 games in a row. Or they go 2-4. How about this? Chat, give me a record over the next 6. So the next 6 are New York, which is a playoff team, Sacramento, Golden State on the road, Golden State and Sacramento on the road, Portland on the road, Phoenix on the road, Utah on the road. That's the next 6. K Money says 0-6. Does anyone else have any predictions for that record? Any more predictions? We got 0-6. Don Vito 3-3. Does anyone project a record like 5-1, 6-0? That's probably going to be okay. So Tamberlin says 1-5, at best 2-5. And again, a lot of this is contingent, by the way, on yes, OG is going to come back, and we're okay. So not a lot of faith here. There isn't a single person who has projected a record above 500. So if we're wrong, we're all wrong. Our entire community is wrong. That's a lot of, yeah. Okay. So we can move on from that. Okay. So let's say the average, let's factor very, very highly conservatively, quickly. I just want to figure out how this Raptor season is going to go before we end this chat. So let me just pull up the NBA standings for 1 second. Give me 1 second here. NBA standings 2023. So we currently have, I'm just going to flash up the East. I'm not going to worry too much about the West. So right now the Raptors are 20-27. Okay. So right now they're 20-27. Let's tack on 2-4 because I think that's 1-6 is impossible over the next 6. Be rich. So let's say 22-31. So we say the record is 22-31 over the next 6. Now, how about after that? We have Houston, Memphis, San Antonio, Utah, Detroit, and Orlando that has been sneaky competitive. Provided the Raptors, okay, let's not go that far. Let's just go up until the trade deadline. So it's just Houston, Memphis, San Antonio. So that 3, where do you see the Raptors going on that 3-game stretch? So that's just Houston, which is a pretty bad team, but the Raptors have lost some pretty bad teams. That's Memphis, at Houston, and then San Antonio at home. San Antonio has been, okay, so we have Flowery and DeRozan saying 2-1. Vegan Grass 1-2, 2-1, 1-2, 1-5. Kenneth Lau, you're late. 2-1, 1-2. Okay. So we are going to go from let's say 2-1. So that means that the Raptors would be 24-32 going into the trade deadline as per our expectations. 24-32. Now at the trade deadline, obviously they can clearly initiate a tank, right? I think most people expecting us to go 9-0 or 8-1 or 7-2 over this next stretch, especially if Fred is battling injuries. Although I think Fred sitting is actually helpful to the tank personally, but we're not going to go into that. Vegan Grass brings up a good point. We are 1-1 against the Rockets. I mean, honestly, man, like we're at a point right now where we could easily slide 1-8, 2-9. I think we're being very generous with that projection. Okay, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 games. Yep. Okay. So yeah, I mean, 1-1 is not possible. We only played them twice. He makes a good point. Yeah, correct. Why win 4 games, Rob? Let's make a business decision. I mean, you're going to have to be careful about how aggressively you tank. You do need to maintain some semblance of integrity around the league and, some misdirection of whether or not you can be competitive. Because if teams know that you're not being competitive and somehow it leaks through Fred VanVleet's very leaky camp that you're also not interested in bringing him back, then the trade value for him goes down because your negotiating position goes to absolute shit, right? So I think that that's important. So if the Raptors are that far behind the 8 ball currently, let's just do a sort of, let's try to understand this. Okay. Just give me 1 second here. So currently the 6th place is Miami Heat. Okay. We're going to consider 6th place because we've heard Masai Ujiri's opinion on play-in. So we currently have 6th seed is 3 games above 500. 7th seed is 3 games above 500, and the 8th place Hawks right now are 1 game above 500. So let's say the Miami Heat are the team that we need to bounce out of that 6th seed, because I don't see how the Cavs, Nets, even without Durant, Bucks, Sixers, or Celtics. By the way, to those who aren't watching, the Sixers have climbed all the way to 2nd in the East, and they are on a streak. They are 8-2 over the last 10. The Celtics have won 9 straight after tonight. They are clearly drawing some separation after leaking a little bit of oil, even without Jayson Tatum right now. So really 3 games above 500. If our estimate is correct of where this team will be at that mark, let's just do some fast math here, right? So I said 20. What did I say? Can someone remind me what the record was just quickly? Was it 20? Was it 20? 22? 20? Was it 22? And someone in the comments remind me. Was it 22-34? 24-32. Thanks, K Money. Okay, so 24-32, and the team we're trying to catch is 3 games above 500. Yeah, it was 24-32. Okay. So 24-32 is 8 games below 500. The team we're trying to catch is 3 games above 500. The math is the math. The math is the math. Adding a guy like Miles Turner is not bridging the gap between you and a team that is expected to be at 6. And by the way, a lot of the teams ahead of you are teams that have been missing a lot of players from their lineup. They could aggressively, and I do mean aggressively, pick up steam. You've had a pretty healthy roster through a lot of this losing, right? So I think the season is over. I think every loss just puts you in a complicated situation. And, you know, to end this night on something that sort of makes sense, we're just going to look at the Tankathon page and just sort of see where the Raptors are. And I'm going to simulate the lottery and let you know what happens. Right now, the Raptors have sole possession of 6th. The teams ahead of them are Orlando, San Antonio, Charlotte, Detroit, Houston. Guess what? Facing some of those teams coming up. A lot, actually. So this is going to be quite the tank. The Houston Rockets are on a 13-game losing streak. They are firmly tanking pretty hard. So let's sim the lottery and see what happens. I'm going to sim the lottery, and the Raptors move down a spot to 7th. Let's sim the lottery again. Okay. I'm going to publish this one as a, let's just call it a good way to end this chat. Here we go. I have a feeling that Tankathon is about to get a lot of traffic from Toronto fans, but here you go. Here are the published lottery results from Tankathon as your final thought of the night. Sleep well, Raptors Nation. The Raptors get a top 3 pick on my second try. On my second try, the Raptors got a top 3 pick. And maybe at some point, I don't know if you guys follow Mr. Beast, but do you remember Mr. Beast saying PewDiePie like 10,000 times? I don't want to give Mr. Beast, clout, but I mean, my God, he doesn't need it. He has like, I think 100 million followers. Maybe if the Raptors are really, really, really bad, 10 games from now, and they're really in the top 3, what we'll do is we'll just do a live, 100 rolls, and I'll share my screen, and we'll just, have this therapeutic thing where we just, will this into existence. Because I tell you guys, NBA 2K18 was when I first drafted Scotty Barnes to the Toronto Raptors. NBA 2K18 in my GM mode. NBA 2K6 was when I first drafted DeMar DeRozan. No, sorry. NBA 2K7 was when I first drafted a certain DeMar DeRozan to the Toronto Raptors. Okay. So let's believe in the power of positive thinking. Let us believe in the manifestation. If you have any credence if you put any weight into that stuff in The Secret, just manifest it. A top 3 pick. We don't have to be greedy. Maybe a top 2 pick. We don't have to be greedy, get the number 1 spot, but let's just get a top 2 pick, because this team, what is sorely lacking is players who understand how to play, players who are exciting to watch. I'm sorry, this team is just at times very painful to watch. At times it's exciting. There are exciting moments, but there are some very, very frustrating moments too. I think Scoot or Wemby would really, really spruce up the product on the court. I think it would be super exciting to have a player like that. I have a lot of respect for Scotty Barnes, but even he was not as highly touted as a guy like Victor Wembanyama. The Raptors have never had a guy like that. Not even Vince. I mean, Vince was highly touted, but he wasn't like the number 1 pick. Andrea was the number 1 pick, but he was like in one of the worst drafts in NBA history. The Raptors have never drafted a franchise cornerstone at the draft. They've never drafted a Tim Duncan. The year they got Allen Iverson, Tamberlin makes a good point. By the way, like Scotty Barnes is like undefeated at the free throw line when I do this. When he's at the line, I cross my fingers, and I when he's having a really frustrating night at the line, I do this so that he stops missing, and he always does. So now everyone has actual evidence that I'm crazy, because I believe in stuff like this. I don't really believe in stuff like this, but I just sometimes think, what's the harm? And sometimes you can manifest certain things, right? So anyway, Justice Star, good point. Go to bed. Let's go to bed. All right. Have a good night, guys. It's almost midnight. And let's get Wembanyama on this team, man. Do I have a picture of Wembanyama to flash on the screen as the final? No, I don't. But nevertheless, make sure to hit, if you're in the chat, you obviously had to sub. I hope that wasn't annoying, and it's not to get subs that we've done that. We just wanted to limit the spam, and hopefully we limited the spam tonight. I will edit down that analytics video breakdown, and I'll try to post it tomorrow. All right. Cheers. Yeah, I knock on wood too. My mom started that for me. Anyways, cheers, guys. Have a good one. Good night. Make sure to hit the like. There's like 199 people here. If we can get the stream up to 199 likes, I'll be very, very pleased. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. And thank you to everyone for the super chats. They really do help a lot. Really appreciate it. Super stickers, super chats, whatever they are. Thank you. Jonathan, I will try to figure out how to get you as a mod for the next game. But honestly, man, like if you don't want to do it, I was fine tonight. So yeah. See you, man. Good night.